Chapter 175. The old man thought about his words for a bit, not sure if he was convinced or not. But in the end he still raised his blade and introduced himself with a hoarse voice. I'm man-killer fiend Meng Ao, my blade doesn't kill nameless people. Who are you? Tell me your name. Now that things had developed to this point, it was no longer interesting for the two cultivators. Originally they only thought he was a fun guy to play around with. But now that the situation had turned into a cliché of fighting and killing, the cultivators didn't have the mood to spar with the people of Jianghu. And they didn't want to waste any more words with this man-killer fiend Meng Ao. Ziguzi casually took out a talisman from his sleeve, flicked his wrist and threw it out. Then he quickly walked towards Black Blade Ingjuran and man-killer fiend Meng Ao, extending his hand. As soon as the talisman was used, the two Jianghu cultivators felt a sudden sense of weakness, silently cursing in their hearts. This wasn't a feeling of weakness from a fierce battle, nor was it a feeling of physical exhaustion from hard work. At that time there was still a bit of qi left in their hearts. Even if their bodies were tired, their hearts still wanted to persevere. But right now the feeling they were feeling right now was a feeling of powerlessness on a fine spring night, or the feeling of lying on a bamboo bed by the window listening to the sound of falling flowers. Their bodies didn't want to move and their hearts didn't want to move either. They didn't even want to hold their blades. A talisman that could be easily written by an emptiness realm cultivator instantly subdued the two Jianghu cultivators. Ziguzi walked in front of them and stretched out his hands, grabbing them by the neck like he was grabbing chickens. He easily lifted them into the air and shook them violently. Clink clank 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 clank. Blades, daggers, darts, hooks, iron spikes, hemp ropes, cow tendon ropes, copper coins, silver and gold leaves. Everything was shaken out and fell to the ground. Then the cultivator pressed their bodies a few times and threw them to the ground. To mortals, spirit energy that was even more tyrannical than the most profound inner energy sealed their acupuncture points. Other than their eyes and mouth, they couldn't move anywhere else. At this time Zhiyoshi, who was coldly watching from behind, spoke. Black Blade Ingjuran. Man-killer fiend Meng Ao. What is your status in the mortal Jianghu? Ingjuran now knew what kind of person he was up against. Legend had it that only the most unlucky and ignorant martial artists in the world of martial artists in the wild or on the road could provoke them once every 10 years or so. Cultivators. However, this was his second time this year. Although the tiredness in his body had not faded and his acupuncture points had been forcefully sealed, he still did his best to speak. I am very famous near the city of Wei. Oh, normal Jianghu people will give me face. In the Qing kingdom, oh, in the southeast it is also quite. Just now you said that if we steal the dragon cult's golden statue the followers will scatter like birds and beasts. Are you sure? Kiyoshi asked again. I am sure. Ingjuran widened his eyes in surprise. Aren't the two deities? Why are you so sure? The other party didn't care about his question. After exchanging a few words with Ziguzi he asked again, as if he was just a letter that could talk. Ingjuran wasn't angry at this kind of disdain. In fact, anyone who could easily make a second-rate, almost first-rate Wuling master lose his ability to fight was enough to erase all other emotions from his heart. He just wanted to have the chance to obtain such a method. So he continued, because those followers are actually doing this for. He repeated it many times but couldn't finish his sentence. In the end he couldn't even stutter clearly and his face turned purple. Only now did Ziguzi realize that even though he'd tried his best to reduce his strength so that he wouldn't directly kill the two, spiritual energy was still too domineering for a secular practitioner. He snorted coldly and lightly stomped his foot on the ground, sending 2 stones flying. With another kick, the stones shot out and unsealed the two's acupoints. Ingjuran's speech finally became clear. But he didn't hurry to stand up and only finished his words. Those followers aren't devout or anything, they're just doing it for their own benefits. If we steal the golden statue they'll soon realize. He tried his best to articulate his words and found that the two cultivators were starting to think about something. Their expressions were calm and cold and they almost never looked at him or Meng Ao. Because of this, Ingjuran knew that this wasn't a good sign. These people really didn't hold back when they killed. He lightly nudged Meng Ao, who was standing beside him, without saying a word. The old man understood that Hero Ing meant to wait for the right time. If things go south, we'll immediately attack. Then Ingjuran thought for a while and said, just now I had eyes but failed to recognize MT Tai. and unintentionally offended the two Sendo. But I've seen a Sendo in Weiqing City before. That was at the Qiao family's house. As he spoke, he observed the two cultivators' expressions. He found that their eyes lit up and turned to look at him at the same time. He let out a sigh of relief and organized his words more concise and concise. That loyal servant was the man-killer fiend Meng Ao who was by my side. Because at that time, Taoist Li Yunxin's martial arts were extremely high, I paid attention to his news. Later I found out that another Taoist Ling Kong came to Weiqing City and the two were good friends. The two Sendo are also immortals and are now also in Weiqing City, so they should be close friends with Taoist Ling Kong. Then, you probably know about that Taoist Li Yunxin. When Ying Juren said this, his tone was completely devoid of the usual Jianghu atmosphere, which made the two cultivators slightly surprised. This person doesn't seem to be a completely uncivilized person. But what they cared about was not this detail, but the Taoist Li Yunxin in Ying Juren's words. When he finally finished telling them what he knew, Shi Yoshi and Zi Guzi looked at each other and frowned slightly. That day you saw that Li Yunxin in the Qiao family's house, so you paid attention to him. Shi Yoshi thought about what Ying Juren said and asked him slowly and carefully, so in the following days I tried to find out more. I thought he was a hidden master, but later I found out that he was a cultivator. Because you paid attention to him and inquired about him, you knew that he spoke in a strange way. How strange. Ying Juren suddenly realized that he had made the second mistake tonight. These two cultivators and that Li Yunxin were not the same kind of people. But for the people in the secular world, they couldn't be blamed for making this kind of mistake. Just like how the common people in the market all thought that the officials in the capital were protecting each other and working together to support the emperor. Knowledgeable people naturally knew that this was not the case. There was strife in the officialdom and the emperor was not supreme. However, on the issue of Xian men and immortals, the most knowledgeable people in the secular world were not much better than the ignorant people in the view of the officials in the capital. Not to mention him. But at this moment, Shi Yoshi's eyes were full of seriousness and curiosity, so he had to answer. Ying Juren took a deep breath. This is strange. That is to say, the way he speaks is very unique. He likes to say a few strange words, curse words. It is said that he likes to curse people and has a bad temper. These are all words that no one has ever heard. For example, words like retarded, retard, psychopath, and so on. You also said that a friend of yours saw Li Yunxin again a few days ago. Then you saw him again in the past few days. Neither your friend nor you realized that this Li Yunxin is different from the previous one. Does this mean? Shi Yoshi leaned forward slightly, staring at Ying Juren. The current Li Yunxin and the Li Yunxin you saw in the Qiao family's yard are still the same person? Because of the way he speaks, you can't find another person in the world? Think carefully before you answer me. There was nothing he couldn't think clearly about. The only thing he didn't know was how the other party would react after answering him. Ying Juren's brain was working very fast, but finally, he still couldn't think of a good way. So he could only secretly raise his breath, ready to turn around later. He said in a low voice, "Yes. Should be the same person." Shi Yoshi immediately straightened his body and turned to Zi Guzi. "Something went wrong with my master. Li Yunxin didn't die. Things are different from what we thought." At that time, Fairy Ling Kong said that Li Yunxin was a Daoist painter who could make treasured scrolls. This kind of person is now the leader of the dragon cult. This dragon cult is not as simple as my master thought. Zi Guzi also frowned. Qi-Wen, hatred, Lord Dongting. These things may be different from what we thought. This news is... The two cultivators looked at each other. The next moment, a smile suddenly appeared on their faces. Amazing! They weren't nervous at all. Not even a little bit. They thought they had the ability to do so. A true state cultivator, 36 wills and emptiness state cultivators gathered in the city of Wei. With such a magnificent lineup, they could flatten the Wei River Prefecture within 3 months. Even if something went wrong, it would mean that it would be the work of the two of them and not a crisis. The young man we met during the day is Li Yunxin. Daoist painter. I heard from the senior cultivators that he's not good at fighting. No. It's because of Daoist painter. What do you mean? We are good at meeting enemies on a narrow path, and that Daoist painter is good at planning. Li Yunxin must be prepared, we can't be careless. Daoist painter is also a cultivator, it's good to be cautious. Alas. That's true. But Daoist painter doesn't have any inheritance, he can't be that good. Unfortunately, we don't have any good treasures. If there is, that's true. If there is any treasure, alas, if we capture that Li Yunxin, it will be a great achievement. The two of them spoke very quickly, and in the blink of an eye, they had said so much, leaving Ingjuren and Meng Ao aside. The two Jianghu experts looked at each other in the dark alley, wishing they could plug their ears. Although they didn't understand, they knew that they were talking about the secrets of the cultivation world. If they heard it, how could they let them go? In the end, Jiyoshi sighed, speaking of treasures. Alas. Last year, during the Heaven Sovereign's Christmas, I went to the Kongyun sect. Do you remember Daoist Red Clouds, one of the 3 disciples of the Kongyun sect? His cultivation of wills and Dao were really mediocre. However, he hid a rui in his sleeve, and once he took it out, it shone brightly and all the evil ghosts avoided it. So I asked him, what do you think? That rui, as long as you're a direct disciple of the Kongyun sect, you'll have it. I'm really envious. Ziguzi also sighed with him but then shook his head. Brother, you don't have to be envious of them. Let's talk about the Dragon Son's hatred. Dragon Son. Once he's killed, the dragon horns, dragon scales, dragon tendons and dragon souls are all treasures. Our master is a generous person, so we can't miss out on some benefits. As for that Li Yunxin, if we catch him and ask him to paint a few scrolls for us, our master probably won't say anything. That's right. But let's talk about this tomorrow. Jiyoshi stopped talking, glanced at Ingjuren and Meng Ao, and suddenly thought of something. Maybe it was because he was in a good mood because he had just obtained an extraordinary skill, so he asked, from what you said just now, it seems like you have a grudge against the Yu residents in the Eagle King Castle. But why did you come to the city of Wei to provoke the dragon cult? Ingjuren hesitated for a while and then said in a deep voice, I want to help my friend get revenge. Jiyoshi thought this was a boring reason. You would also do this kind of thing? What friend? After finishing his words, he was about to leave. The two Jianghu masters thought that they had heard a secret, so the other party would definitely kill them. But in the minds of the cultivators, there was no need for that. Although killing them was just a matter of moving a finger, there was a sin of killing, and if someone found an excuse to kill indiscriminately, in the future it would not be worth it. They had all heard about the incident where Fairy Ling Kong killed Panenzi. It was like brushing the ants on the table onto the ground because they didn't want to dirty their fingers instead of crushing them to death. One talisman could make these two people sleep for half a month and then everything would be fine. After all, they were just two people from the secular world. In the eyes of the cultivators, they were just people. But after asking this casually and taking 2 steps forward, there was no reply. Jiyoshi turned around and took a glance. If he was too scared to speak, injured, or thinking about how to answer, Jiyoshi would continue to walk. He just asked casually and didn't care about the answer. But all he saw was that Ingjuren sitting in a dark corner, with only his pale chin exposed. His lips were tightly pressed into a line. He still didn't want to answer. You don't know what's good for you. Jiyoshi raised his hand. Since he didn't want to answer, he didn't want to hear it either. It was easy and fast to switch between one thought and another. Just now he was afraid of some trouble and didn't want to kill him. But at this moment, because the other didn't want to answer, he suddenly felt a little unhappy, and then he realized that there was actually a reason to kill him. Not wanting to dirty his hands, brushing the ants off the table and thinking about something else, he casually crushed the ants to death. For an ant this was a matter of life and death, but for a human it wasn't even a big deal. A blue light appeared on his fingertip. Li Yunxin could release spirit energy to shatter an emptiness realm cultivator's ocean of qi. An emptiness realm cultivator could also release a bit of spirit energy that was almost non-existent to cultivators, but deadly to mortals. When Ingjuren saw the green light, he subconsciously raised his hand as if he wanted to block it. Man-killer fiend Meng Ao also saw the blue light and stood up, as if wanting to jump in front of Ingjuren. But then he heard a frivolous voice. I suddenly feel like this person isn't bad. What do you guys think? Followed by a sickly sweet voice. Whatever the great king says, it must be true, followed by a soft voice. That old man, oh my great king, that old man from House Qiao. Before Ingjuren and Meng Ao could figure out what was going on, Ziguzi and Jiyoshi were already alerted. They didn't notice that there was someone hiding nearby. Several talismans appeared in their hands. Layers and layers of light flashed on their bodies. Then Ziguzi stood guard in front. while Zhiyoshi held a talisman at the back, leaning against the wall with a yellow talisman on it and shouted, "Who are you?" A second later the experts appeared. A white-clothed young man sat on the wall on one side of the alley, one leg on the wall, the other dangling down. He held a tears bamboo fan in his hand, smiling faintly. He wasn't looking at the two of them but at Ingjuren and Meng Ao. A black-clothed girl with a pretty face sat beside him, her legs slanted to one side. She lightly hammered his shoulders with her delicate fists. There were 3 other men standing on the wall next to the black-clothed girl. They were well-behaved and didn't speak. Their faces were shrouded in darkness and couldn't be seen clearly. There seemed to be another figure further away. But that person must have cast some kind of spell. In fact, these people had been sitting or standing on the wall, looking at what happened just now. Now that they had revealed themselves, they no longer concealed their presence. Zhiyoshi and Ziguzi looked at each other, and their expressions didn't look good. Because at this moment in the alley, demon aura soared to the sky. It was the leader of the dragon cult, Xianxia. The 2 Daotong cultivators were still thinking about what this sudden incident meant, and whether they could escape unscathed from the siege of the demons. On the other side, Xianxia spoke to Black Blade Ingjuren. "So you're my fan? Then let me ask you, who are you avenging?" Ingjuren had 100 things he couldn't understand. But he only knew one thing: the people on the wall were extremely arrogant. Looking at the 2 cultivators' reactions, he realized that this group of people was ridiculously strong. He didn't need to think about anything else. He knew that only these people with demonic auras could save him and Meng Ao today. But even so, he was still stunned and didn't answer immediately. Xianxia wasn't angry and only looked at him with interest. "What, you still don't want to say?" Ingjuren took a deep breath. Sendo's magic power is strong, but he doesn't know about the affairs of the Jianghu. That person, if the information is leaked. Enough. Xianxia raised his fan and interrupted him as if he didn't care about the answer. He pointed at Ingjuren and Meng Ao, then turned to Zhiyoshi and Ziguzi. "I'll protect these 2. Chapter 176. Zhiyoshi and Ziguzi didn't quite understand what "I'm covered" meant. But cultivators knew other cultivators best, and they knew demons best. Therefore they knew that the other party didn't care whether they could understand the meaning of the words, just like they didn't care about what the 2 secular people said. However, judging from the tone and expression of the other party, they could roughly figure out what the 3 words were trying to convey. These demons and that Taoist priest Danqing Xianxia were very bold. Now that Immortal Yunzi was in the city of Wei and there were dozens of cultivators in the city, they dared to show up so openly. After having such a thought, the 2 cultivators felt a little calmer, and felt ashamed of their panic just now. Appearing at this time and in this way, it seemed that the other party just wanted to convey an attitude or send a signal. The whole city of Wei was under the control of Daotong. If the 2 of them really fought fiercely here, the delicate balance in the city would be broken. However, after all, the other party had more people and they didn't know the means of Taoist priest Danqing. Therefore, after a little relief, Zhiyoshi saluted to Xianxia with a cold face. "Li, I didn't expect that you didn't die. But Taoist priest Danqing is also a cultivator and he cultivates the way of the heavenly heart. Why are you with demons?" Xianxia stared at him for a while and then looked at Ziguzi. Then, while pointing at the 2 with his fan, he turned to the demons beside him and said, "Sheriff, Shanji is now in the emptiness realm. Shuxiji and intent realm. The speed of your cultivation is already inconceivable for human cultivators. But when it comes to fighting, whether you can win or not, the realm is only one aspect. Experience, Taoist magic, equipment, mentality, courage, and so on are all very important. Now, the 2 below, one is in the emptiness realm and the other is in the intent realm, and their realms are almost the same as yours. However, they are more skilled than you in Taoism and have more fighting experience than you, so you are probably not their match. Don't be dissatisfied, Shanji." Xianxia's attitude infuriated Zhiyoshi and Ziguzi. Xianxia's disdain was different from the disdain of those ignorant mortals. This disdain came from a fellow cultivator. In fact, it couldn't even be considered contempt. It was disregard. However, they were not Ingjuren or Meng Ao. He did not think that the other party was much more brilliant than him. Although Daoist priests in painting were rare, it wasn't unheard of. Some heavenly caves and sects would worship them. In the eyes of the cultivators of Daotong and Kenzo, Daoist Danqing was not a very orthodox cultivator. In other words, it was a simplified version of a cultivator. They only cultivated realms, not Taoist magic. Previously, Zhiyoshi reminded Ziguzi to be careful of Daoist Danqing Li Yunxin's means. Even without Taoist magic, Daoist Danqing's painting scrolls and formations were very troublesome. However, this cautious thought was overwhelmed by the disdain they suffered. The two Daoists who had only gone through the love tribulations were irritated. They thought that even if they were not as good as the others and could not defeat the demons, they needed to let them know that the cultivators of Daotong were not ants that could be crushed easily. They were not ordinary mortals. However, Zhiyoshi was more determined while Ziguzi was a little hesitant. He was in the realm of conception. However, according to Li Yunxin's tone, the two with the lowest cultivation were also in the realm of conception. He was afraid that he would suffer a more troublesome injury which would affect his future cultivation. Therefore he stopped them. After all, they have the advantage in numbers. Senior brother, we'd better lie low for a while. Don't you realize what kind of situation we are in today? But Zhiyoshi looked at him seriously. The dragon cult has a plan in the city. Now that they know that we may take action, they came to do something. So someone came and did something, a warning, an ultimatum. If the two of us show weakness and let them do whatever they want, not only will we lose face for Daotong and our master, but we will also be ridiculed by them tonight. Only by letting them know that we are not to be trifled with can we gain respect. Respect comes from power. Ziguzi had to admit that Zhiyoshi's words were very reasonable. In fact, they were indeed very reasonable. Therefore he did not say anything more and let Zhiyoshi speak loudly. At first I thought that the hierarch of the dragon cult was just a puppet. But now I know from the two that it is Daoist Danqing Li Yunxin. You are not dead. Since you are not dead, I don't want to ask you how you survived. But you have to think twice. Demons are after all different species. If you have difficulties, you may be forgiven by Daotong after the matter in the city of Wei is over. But the premise is, Li, you can be forced by the demons, but you can't be the accomplice of the evildoer. Li Yunxin heard his words and felt that Zhiyoshi's words were beautiful. Not only did he make his position clear, but he also gave himself a way out. Therefore he glanced at the chicken spirit and shook his head with a smile. Are you really not convinced? Fine, I have spoiled you before. You still don't know how dangerous the Jianghu is. Then go and have fun. You can choose one of them and defeat either of them. When this matter is over, you will be in charge of the Liuhe prefecture. At least I didn't give you this name for nothing. When a man in colorful clothes beside him heard this, he immediately cheered and jumped into the alley. Zhiyoshi angrily widened his eyes. Does Li really want to humiliate us like this? Li Yunxin didn't pay any attention to him. The emptiness boundary Daoist shouted again. Even if we have to fight, it shouldn't be this demon. You should do it yourself. The black-clothed woman on top of the wall seemed to have heard a joke and suddenly laughed. Her slender and soft waist bent like a weeping willow. She leaned on Li Yunxin and said coquettishly, "My king, look at that idiot's stupid words." Li Yunxin only smiled. Be careful. When the chicken spirit heard this, it pounced toward the two cultivators without any fear of death. This caused Zhiyoshi and Ziguzi to be stunned. This demon didn't have any magic weapon, didn't make any hand seals, and didn't use any Daoist techniques. It only used its body to attack. Was it a strategy to lure the enemy or some other unique skill? Zhiyoshi only had time to glance at Li Yunxin on top of the wall before the strong wind created by the demon's attack arrived. Although Ingjuren and Mengao were still slightly worried about their own fate, they couldn't help but cheer in their hearts when they saw this scene. What a brilliant kung fu! The distance of more than 10 steps was covered by the man called Pheasant in an instant. His hands bent into claws in midair, and the strong wind created by the claws could be felt even from where they were. According to their experience in martial arts, they didn't doubt that this pheasant could tear a hard rock apart with one claw. It wasn't an exaggeration. Because he couldn't figure out the demon's mind, cultivator Zhiyoshi chose a safer method. He used a magic brush and wrote a talisman in midair. When a cultivator wrote a talisman, a barrier of 3 steps appeared in front of him. Although the barrier was related to the cultivator's cultivation level, it was, after all, created according to the laws of heaven and earth, so its defensive power couldn't be underestimated. Once this restriction was formed, it immediately took effect. The chicken spirit that was tearing through the air crashed into the invisible barrier with a bang, and was immediately knocked back 4 or 5 steps. At the same time, the talisman that Xianxia used also took effect. The shadow formed by the moonlight in the alley seemed to have a life of its own and quickly changed shape, stinging the pheasant that fell to the ground. This time he immediately lost his human form and was beaten back to his original form. Ingjuran and Meng Ao were stunned. Such a terrifying attack was repelled in mid-air. Moreover, he turned into a chicken. Xianxia and Ziguzi were also stunned. They really didn't expect that this demon would really attack them with only his body. What was he trying to do? He turned around to look at Li Yunxin. He found that Li Yunxin was also looking at them. His eyes weren't friendly. Actually, they weren't friendly at all. Are you crazy? Li Yunxin glared and said to Xianxia, as if he had just suffered a great injury and felt wronged. You beat him back to his original form. Xianxia and Ziguzi looked at each other and frowned, feeling a bit confused. They didn't really understand what this Li Yunxin was trying to do. He was actually purposely making those demons come here to die one by one. Was there really a reason behind it? Or Xianxia spoke in a low voice. What does Li mean? Against a demon, do you still want me to be merciful? Furthermore, you were the one who wanted that demon to jump down and fight us. The red-crowned rooster circled around the ground a few times, then found a direction and jumped onto the wall. Li Yunxin silently stared at him for a while. Then he suddenly didn't seem angry anymore and laughed. So you really didn't understand the situation, you stinky Daoists. So annoying. Yunzi is too smart, you're too stupid. Can't you compromise? That would save me a lot of effort, Li Yunxin sighed. Fine, then I'll tell you the current situation. Tonight you two were unlucky to run into this black blade and the man-killer fiend. So you knew that I wasn't dead, Li Yunxin shrugged. Do you know what this means? Li, just say it, Xianxia spoke in a low voice. Why beat around the bush? Li Yunxin helplessly rubbed his forehead. Me, look at me, I'm the one standing in front of you right now. I survived the battle between Long Sun and Ling Kongzi, and a profound realm demon. Both of you know that Long Zichen is dead, right? You also think that the peak of transcendent realm Ling Kongzi is dead, right? You also know that the one who killed Ling Kongzi was a profound realm demon. Even though I was surrounded by 3 terrifying people, I still managed to survive. Do you understand now? Xianxia and Ziguzi exchanged glances and frowned. Li Yunxin finally gave up. He shrugged. Fine friend. This means that I have a big secret. My identity is also a big secret. A secret that even your Daoist Yunzi doesn't know about. Now that you know about this secret, do you still think I'll let you walk out of this alley alive? What I'm curious about is why you don't understand this. He pointed at Xianxia and Ziguzi resentfully. If I know that I'm going to die and the villain doesn't want to kill me for the time being, but sends a small fry to play with me, I'll definitely work with that small fry to buy time. You know, countless villains die because they talk too much. I'll try to find an opportunity and even try to make the villain think that I'm interesting so that I can survive. But you just beat my Red Dragon ambassador back to his original form. So let me ask you, friend, are you crazy? You don't want to live? Hearing the words of this Taoist priest named Li Yunxin, Xianxia and Ziguzi finally realized that they were not facing a normal cultivator. This man was a lunatic. Moreover, he was an extremely arrogant and egotistical lunatic. It was reasonable for him to surround them in the alley and ridicule them. It was also reasonable for him to ask his minions to provoke them. It was even reasonable to break their hands and feet and let those monsters humiliate them. But now he was talking to them with an attitude of, you should be obedient and begging for mercy, but now you're not obedient and sensible enough. Xianxia was furious in his heart, and the magic brush in his hand suddenly glowed with a misty green light. He took a step forward and widened his eyes, saying, You don't think that your Daoist master will avenge you in the future. Li Yunxin waited for his anger to brew, then looked down at him coldly and interrupted him. Now you think that I'm unreasonable and arrogant, and you're angry that you want to fight me even if you have to die. Although cultivators cherish their lives very much, the two of you are in a low state and you don't know what it means to cherish your lives. As he spoke, he stood up and put away his previous arrogant and frivolous attitude. This is the result I want. You're extremely angry. Because only when a person with extreme anger dies will his obsession be extremely strong, and he will remember the things that happened before his death deeply. But after all, there is still a little hope in your hearts. This hope comes from my own funeral. What else do you think Yunzi will do? Now let me tell you. The reason why I killed the two of you in this alley tonight and didn't worry that Yunzi would destroy the dragon cult out of anger is because, under the two cultivators' shocked and incredulous gazes, Li Yunxin smiled cruelly and added the last sentence. He asked me to do this. I kill the 36 cultivators and he will get the power that Dao Tong gave him. I live and he benefits. Welcome to the real world. Kill them. Such words set off a monstrous wave in the hearts of the two cultivators. The shock made them unable to calm down and think about whether what the other said was true or false. Zhiyoshi's eyes twitched and he quickly blinked a few times. Suddenly he shouted at Li Yunxin furiously, "Even if I die, I'll drag you to the grave with me. Take this move of mine." He finally decided to attack this Daoist priest. Before he died, even if he couldn't kill him, he would at least leave a wound on him. However, the man in white standing coldly in the darkness on top of the wall didn't move. He just slightly bent his finger. For some reason it reminded Zhiyoshi and Ziguzi of the way they killed the two Jianghu people. The two cultivators felt their hearts plummet. It was as if the alley had suddenly been separated from the world. And the few monsters standing on the wall and that Li Yunxin seemed to have gone far away. The people and events in this alley were temporarily cut off from this world. Just like what they did during the day. Just stronger. Then they heard someone talking in the darkness on the other side of the alley. The voice was sharp and weird, making people's hair stand on end. "Ah, you guys. You're not qualified to be killed by the king. Humph, how dare you? Kneel down when you see me. I'll play with you." They saw a fiery red figure walking out from the darkness. Flames suddenly appeared. Chapter 177. The flame lit up the alley. The light itself turned into a substance like water or mist. Because of the law of insulation fruit, it only existed in the alley and didn't spread out at all. This made the person in the flame clearer and more dazzling. At first, the two cultivators thought it was a female general with a red helmet and red armor. Flames that appeared out of thin air surrounded her feet, spiraling and blooming on the ground, like a flaming dress. The flame licked the ground and the wall, and the steam made the air hot and twisted. The female general had a pair of fiery red eyes, and her pupils were like thin black lines. This meant she was a dragon's. A terrible and ominous premonition suddenly rose in the two cultivators' hearts. Because of this fear and surprise, they finally saw the armor on the female general clearly. It seemed to be more than just an armor. The red hard armor only protected the dragon lady's head, chest, hips, arms, shoulders and elbows. The other parts. The cultivators originally thought the gray color was the inner lining. But now they realized that it was actually covered with a large number of scales growing out of her body. The shape of the armor was strange and they had never seen it before. But the two huge, ferocious-looking arm shields with sharp blades on the elbows left a deep impression on them. Now the hands of the dragons were also burning with flames, and the 5 fingers and palms turned almost transparent red in the flame. This didn't match her sharp and demonic voice. But the cultivators didn't have the mood to judge the other's appearance, voice, or even eyes. Ziguzi stared at the dragon lady who walked out of the flame with a terrible momentum, and felt his fingertips trembling slightly. And he said to his senior brother with the same trembling voice, "Z. Zhiyoshi let out a sigh and clenched his teeth. He knew that the one in front of him might be hatred. The dragons that appeared in the city of Wei. Besides hatred, who else could it be? But he didn't expect that hatred's avatar was actually a woman. Now the woman stopped 5 steps away from the two of them. She was slightly taller than the two cultivators. So she looked down at them and the light of the fire threw dancing shadows on her face. When she spoke again, her voice was still shrill. But his tone became slower, languid, and deep. This made her sound like a little girl who was full of malice and was staring at the 2 little toys with cruel curiosity. She was dangerous and unpredictable. "Oh, I've waited for so long." As she sighed with emotion, she stood in front of 2 cultivators in the alley, with her back to Li Yunxin and the 4 demons on top of the wall. Therefore only Zhiyoshi and Ziguzi could see that she was rolling her eyes strangely. One of her eyes was staring at the 2 cultivators, and the other was tilted to the side. He seemed to be looking at the people on the wall. Naturally, she could not see the people behind her through her own head. Therefore, this strange scene only lasted for a very, very short moment. It was so short that the two people who were about to die wondered if it was an illusion because of the fire and the shadow. At this moment, Xianxia and Ziguzi suddenly realized something else. If the dragons in front of them were hatred, that Li Yunxin could actually tell her to kill them, in such a casual but obviously condescending tone. Who was he? Xianxia suddenly turned to Li Yunxin and frowned. You? But because of his movement, the pupils of the dragon lady suddenly shrank, as if she was extremely afraid of him talking to Li Yunxin again. Just after he said that word, the dragon lady spat out a rare short but clear word, die. Then just like the chicken spirit just now, with a fierce momentum with overwhelming flames and extremely high heat, she fiercely pounced over. Zhen Chen natal essence. Xianxia shouted to Ziguzi in a low voice. His hand did not stop moving. 2 golden characters had already been sketched out by the magic brush in an instant, even before he had finished speaking. Hold on. You hold them off, I will go. Ziguzi spoke almost at the same time and his figure suddenly became blurred. The two said different things and did different things, but their purpose was the same. Previously they only knew about Li Yunxin and thought it was a miraculous achievement. They wanted to go back and tell Yunzi about it in exchange for some benefits. Because in their view, whether Li Yunxin was dead or alive, it did not matter to the big picture. A true state cultivator could solve a lot of problems. However, what they saw now was Yazi. If Dragon's son wanted to kill them in the city of Wei, even a stupid guy would know that the situation must have changed greatly. Cultivators did not take emotions seriously, but after all, they only took the emotions of cultivators and mortals lightly. Among the cultivators, especially the low-level cultivators like Xianxia and Ziguzi who had only gone through the love and hatred trial, there were many who had deep relationships. The two had been together for a long time and they had a tacit understanding. They were not very afraid of Li Yunxin before because Daoist Danqing was also a Daoist, and they had some vague understanding. But now it was Dragon Lady who was going to kill them. Hatred was notorious, and even though he was in trouble, he was still a person that could not be underestimated in the hearts of cultivators. Li Yunxin said that their death was because of their teacher, and although they were surprised, they still had doubts in their hearts. However, now that he saw the Dragon Lady, he felt that what the sinister young man had said might very well be true. So if that was the case, they could not die like this. They had to find out if it was true. If it was true, they had to tell the news to Dao Tong even if they had to risk their lives. If it was not true, hatred showed up tonight to kill people, they had to tell the Dao Tong Immortal about this. Therefore, the two of them made the most rational decision at the same time. Xianxia, who had the cultivation of emptiness realm, used the 3 steps barrier formed when he wrote the talismans to stop Dragon Lady. As long as he could stop her for 1 or 2 breaths, Ziguzi, who was better at the art of escaping, could escape. By then Xianxia would die and Ziguzi would find out the truth. It was better than both of them dying here without knowing anything. In this split second, the 2 talismans written by Xianxia were taken out. The 3 steps barrier formed in front of him, and it immediately collided with the flame and high temperature, emitting a brilliant golden light. Ziguzi's figure gradually became transparent. Before he was about to escape, he couldn't help but turn his head and look at his martial brother. He decided to remember this last moment. In the future, no matter where he went, he would never forget this deep hatred. He must. However, the last person he saw was not his martial brother Xianxia. The golden light in front of the cultivator rose, but the Dragon Lady was not blocked or bounced back like the chicken spirit. In front of her flame, the barrier was like a brittle paper that had been exposed to the sun for a long time, breaking into rays of golden light upon contact. Dragon Lady went straight to within 3 steps of the cultivator, as if she was in an uninhabited place. Xianxia's Zhen and Qin talismans didn't show any effect. He didn't even have the time to wonder why the Dragon Lady was not blocked by the barrier before his head was smashed by a palm. Therefore, what Ziguzi saw was the flesh, bones, brains, and blood turning into green smoke in the raging flame. Before he could figure out why the Dragon Lady had instantly killed his Void Realm Daoist brother, he had also smashed his head into pieces with a similar palm strike. At this time, the echo of the word die that Dragon Lady said in the alley had completely dissipated. Everything was done with 1 palm. The flame suddenly dissipated. Dragon Lady turned around and exhaled. Huh. She seemed to be dissatisfied that the two cultivators were killed so easily. Li Yunxin jumped down from the top of the wall. As soon as he landed, he threw out an iron chain from his sleeve and locked the souls of the two cultivators. After locking the souls, he looked at the other end of the alley. A moment later, a black shadow approached from afar. It seemed that it only took 2 or 3 steps to cross the alley and reach the two souls. But it couldn't go any further. The array that Li Yunxin set up had not dissipated yet. The black shadow could only keep walking, but it was still in the same place. This was probably the doppelganger puppet that the White Hell King had mentioned. Some of the names of the mortals were written in the Book of Life and Death. Li Yunxin, the great demon, had to personally collect them. And these two cultivators who didn't care about the mortals were collected by such a puppet. At least in Black Bai Yanjun's world, they were unimportant dust particles. Li Yunxin retracted the iron chain and pulled the two souls into his white paper fan. Then he looked at the clone of the Black Yama King. He realized that the clone puppet wasn't going in this direction. After looking around for a moment, he suddenly transformed into a burst of azure light and disappeared. So that's how it works. Li Yunxin muttered to himself. Some people died because of some coincidences, such as special weather, yin and yang clashing, or simply because they died in a place where yang qi was extremely abundant. Just like today, they happened to be able to hide from the puppet clone and became a lonely ghost that lingered in this world, unable to leave. He looked at Sanhua, who was rubbing his hands to get rid of the dirt. After a moment of silence, he waved his hand. Come down. When the 3 demons and the chicken jumped into the alley, Li Yunxin looked outside the wall and said, I didn't expect you to win against those 2 cultivators. The reason I brought you all here is to train the soldiers. Now that you're following me, you're fooling the mortals every day and living happily. But you must know that not all the demons in this world are so happy. In the outside world, if you meet a Daoist priest like Ziguzi or Zhiyuzi with your cultivation, they will kill you without hesitation. The difference in cultivation isn't that big, but they have magic tools and talismans. They also have a set of experiences passed down by Daotong for thousands of years. Although you're stronger than the demons who can't learn Taoism, there's still a limit. Because no matter what, actual combat and experience are the most important things. He rarely spoke in such a serious tone. The 3 demons stood obediently, and even the chicken spirit, who had been beaten back to its original form, listened quietly. Dragon Lady stood next to them, rubbing her hands nervously as she looked at them. Her eyes kept darting around, making people worry that they might fall out. She seemed to be getting used to her new body, which made her look a little strange. Li Yunxin paused, then pointed at the chicken. But I didn't expect to be talking about you. Are you an idiot? The chicken didn't move, but it knew that Li Yunxin was really going to get angry. There was no anger on his face and his tone was calm. But in the past he had always talked to them as if they were pets, never so harshly. Are you an idiot? When I was lecturing you, I told you to be more careful when you meet people. You really dared to get close to them just now. If it wasn't for the fact that the Daoist priest was even more stupid, thinking that you wouldn't be so stupid as to come to your death, I would have stewed you and eaten you. The cat demon laughed. Li Yunxin ignored her and paced around with his hands behind his back. You're not convinced. You said she rushed over like that too? He turned around and looked at the dragon lady who was possessed by the 3 flowers and pointed. First, her body doesn't have any fate with this world, so the 3-step barrier doesn't work on her. Second, that palm she used. You see, it was just a simple palm. A palm that smashed 2 people's heads? Zhenhua, tell them, how did you do that? Dragon Lady's eyes stopped moving when she heard this and she blinked a few times. But she quickly became shy, rubbing her hands in front of her chest, and the sharp blades on her elbows rubbed against each other, making a jarring sound. I won't tell you. She rubbed her hands and laughed, standing on the same spot. Li Yunxin didn't force her and said for her. That palm, she put it low. First, she broke Shi Yoshi's hand that was holding the magic pen and broke his magic tool. Although the body of a cultivator is strong, it can't be compared to that of a demon. The scariest thing is their Daoist magic. So she broke his hand first. Then where did her palm hit? According to the momentum from the bottom up, it should have hit his face and smashed his head. But she swept up a bit and directly smashed his skull. Skull, I've told you before. This skull can be opened in a very dangerous situation. To force your spirit out of your body, at least you can stay conscious for a breath. It was better to be a lonely ghost than to be destroyed in both body and soul. So she went from top to bottom so that he couldn't escape even if he wanted to. She also rushed over like this. Xianxia, you also rushed over like this. Think about it yourself. The big red-crowned rooster buried its head in its wings. After saying this, Li Yunxin turned to look at Sanhua. So, this palm is really beautiful. Then little demon cat, where did you learn these skills? It was not difficult to know some common sense. But it was more difficult to use common sense in a fight. She rushed over fiercely and she did two things at the same time. This was a kind of fighting instinct that had been honed for a long time. Because of this instinct, she used her hidden advantage that her opponent didn't know to kill an emptiness realm Daoist and a Daoist with intent realm with one palm. The problem was, she was just an emptiness realm middle-level Daoist. Sanhua was confused by his question and she blinked while standing by the wall. She pretended to think for a while and then giggled, I forgot. Chapter 178. Since she said so, Li Yunxin didn't ask much. He looked at her seriously and said in a gentle tone, tell me when you remember. Then he didn't wait for Sanhua's reaction. He turned to the other end of the alley and gently waved his sleeves. With a swishing sound in the wind, the array formation he had set up was lifted. This part of the alley was reconnected to the real world. Then he saw the figure at the entrance of the alley. Li Yunxin knew that the figure was a doppelganger. When a cultivator reached the true state, the word true referred to the transformation of the soul into the real body. A cultivator of the true state could divide his soul into another self. He could think and cast spells. Everything was the same as the real self. The only difference was the strength of the soul and the ability to exist for a long time. Cultivators included Taoist Danqing. Taoist Danqing of the true state could use the soul of some Yin gods to draw a real body for them. This was another form of the soul into the real body. When Li Yunxin first met Mrs. Sanhua, he told her that it was a blessing to meet Taoist Danqing. He was talking about this. However, he was at the peak of the transcendent state, so it was impossible for him to do this. The transcendent state was to turn the virtual into the real. Once the painting was destroyed, the substance would disappear as well. However, Li Yunxin destroyed the painting that Sanhua possessed in the yard, but the real body was still there. This should be the method of the true state. There were probably only 2 people in the world who knew the secret behind it. Even he himself was still trying to figure it out. So when Yu Yunzi's clone saw the dragon lady behind Li Yunxin at the other end of the alley, there was a moment of shock on its face. It was genuine shock. But he quickly hid his expression. The doppelganger didn't move forward. He only asked from the other end of the alley, you killed them. The voice sounded hollow in the alley and the tone at the end of the sentence was low. It was not a question but a statement of fact. I did. Li Yunxin answered. Why did you set up the inhibition formation? I didn't see you kill them. Li Yunxin took a step forward, his body slightly leaning forward, his chin slightly raised, his face revealing an unruly sneer. Do I need to explain to you what I do? Yunzi doppelganger, or rather Yunzi, was silent for a while. His eyes quickly swept past the dragon lady behind Li Yunxin. I don't want to make any mistakes. Compared to Li Yunxin's tone just now, this sentence was clearly showing weakness. It was completely different from the night it appeared. It seemed that the sudden appearance of the dragons behind Li Yunxin made him extremely uneasy and fearful. For thousands of years, there had only been 10 dragons in this world. Shinryu and Kyuko. And now the 11th had appeared. Although there were many ways to create something that looked like dragons in this world, but this dragon lady appearing next to hatred, Yunzi did not think it was a joke. Hatred seemed to be satisfied with Yunzi's tone of showing weakness. He sneered a few times and said, I didn't want any mistakes, so I forbade the fruit of fate so that their souls wouldn't escape. Do you think it's easy for me to do this? It's not like I'm going to use talismans like you little people. Forbade the fruit of fate, one of Dragon Sun Hatred's innate abilities. Yu Yunzi immediately engraved this new discovery into his mind. Then he said, then the souls. Of course they were destroyed. Li Yunxin squinted his eyes impatiently. Didn't you see that stupid Black Yama King came and left? Yunzi did not say anything and looked up and down at Li Yunxin. It should be the truth. It was not impossible for those with high cultivation to avoid the souls left behind by the soul-reaping Yama King. But there was nothing in this world that could hide the souls. He did not see the souls of the two Daoists, so they were indeed destroyed. He tacitly agreed to this, but he did not leave. He looked at Li Yunxin with a gloomy expression. Li Yunxin became impatient again. Why are you still not leaving? What are you doing? Yunzi slowly raised his hand and pointed at the dragon lady behind Li Yunxin. I've never seen her. Nor heard of her. Princess Tongan, of course you haven't heard of her. Li Yunxin looked at Yunzi contemptuously. She is my daughter. You stinky Daoists are afraid of this and that, but do you have any sons or daughters? Cultivators are not afraid of marriage. The Zhi Yoshi and Zi Guzi you killed just now were both Daoists born from cultivators' marriages. Yunzi calmly explained in exchange for 2 breaths of time to think. She is Dragon Lady? The daughter of Lord Tongtan? With whom? I have never heard of her before. Li Yunxin was silent for a moment, then suddenly shook his head, his face revealing a resentful and contemptuous expression. Just one person. She was called Shi Junyu. It was interesting at the time, but who knew she would die in a few moves? After she died, she came out of her body. Hee. I called her Shiwana. Don't you think I didn't betray that woman? He seemed to be getting happier as he spoke. Hey, those idiots only know how to be afraid and slander me. If they knew about this, wouldn't it be a good story? It was not a good story for a woman in the mortal world to die in a fit of lust. But Yunzi didn't intend to say this. His expression finally relaxed, revealing a smile. It's a good story. In that case, well, I and Lord Tongtian are conspiring on a great matter. Now that I see my niece, I can't be rude. I have a water-splitting thorn here. It's the most suitable for a woman to use. Niece, take it. Yunzi shouted in a low voice. Without any visible movement, an iron spine wrapped in a misty green light went straight to Sanhua. The iron spine, which Yunzi called a water-splitting thorn, came very slowly. Perhaps in the eyes of ordinary people it was shooting out, but for Li Yunxin, as long as he wanted to, he could stop it with a raise of his hand. However, he glanced at it and didn't stop it. On the contrary, Sanhua raised her hand, grabbed the iron spine and then made a sound of, huh. Sparks sputtered from her palm, which lasted for a breath's time before stopping. After being held in her hand, the iron spine was still moving forward, but in the end, it didn't break through the solid scales on Dragon Lady's palm. But when she let go of her hand, there was nothing in her palm. The iron spine turned into a puff of green smoke and disappeared. Yunzi's expression became gloomy. That wasn't an iron spine or a water-splitting thorn. Right now he was a real body that was separated from a part of his spirit, and he didn't carry any magic treasures with him. He just wanted to try. But that hatred didn't seem to be afraid of him trying. And that dragon lady took his psychic stab with her bare hands. Although it was a small trick for him in the realm of immortals, it was just a casual strike. But other than the dragons who were famous for their physical strength, there were no demons that could take a casual strike from a realm of immortals when they were in the realm of emptiness. This was a big deal. The 11th dragons appeared. The seriousness of this matter could almost be compared with Emperor Li becoming a ghost emperor. From a long-term point of view, dragons had existed in the world for so long, but it was never heard that they could give birth to a 3rd generation. Yunzi let out a sigh of relief. Good. Congratulations, Lord Tongtian. After saying this, he turned around and left. As soon as he left, Li Yunxin turned around and looked at Ying Juran and Meng Ao, as if he had just sent away an ordinary guest, and spread out his hands. Do you know that you are in big trouble now? The 2 people who were still sitting in the shadow by the wall looked at Li Yunxin speechlessly, not knowing what to say. Big trouble was more than that. Big trouble was so big that they didn't know what kind of trouble it was. It was like a person walking on the side of the road. As soon as he turned a corner, he suddenly saw a landslide and a tsunami in front of him, and the world was upside down. When he looked back, he found that there was no way out. What else could he do but wait silently? Li Yunxin walked in front of the 2 people and squatted down. He looked at Meng Ao first. The best way is to kill you, he said to Meng Ao. Unfortunately, you are an old friend of mine. If I kill you, he will throw a tantrum. So you can't die. He turned around and looked at Ing Juren. The first time I saw you in the Qiao family I thought you were interesting. I didn't expect that you are still so interesting after so long. You are not a child nor a young master who just came to Jianghu. You can still be interesting in the wind and rain. You are a really interesting person. And I don't want to kill you. The two Jianghu warriors carefully breathed a sigh of relief, but they didn't feel relieved. There were too many people in Jianghu who laughed and talked wittily, and then turned around and cut people into pieces. And whether they knew it or not, the beautiful young man in front of them was indeed good at it. So they still stared at Li Yunxin's eyes. But they couldn't look at him directly. That would be considered a provocation. They could only stare at his throat. After looking for a while, they found that his skin was shockingly smooth. It didn't even have pores and skin texture like a human. It was just a layer of smooth and tight skin. Sure enough, he was a demon. So they quickly looked away and only looked at his clothes. Li Yunxin thought for a while and sighed. Tell me about it. You followed those two fools for a few days. You must have seen Lu Gongzan, right? People don't dare to recognize him because he has become younger, but you must have seen him when he was young. Old Meng, if you know he is in the dragon cult, why did you still come to the dragon cult to make trouble? Meng Ao had been silent. But when Li Yunxin mentioned Lu Laodao, his face finally became lively. He looked at Ing Juren. The latter frowned and nodded. Then he quickly glanced at Li Yunxin. Meng Ao opened his mouth. His voice was very hoarse. I know that my old friend is in your cult. But thinking about. Li Yunxin smiled kindly. Don't be burdened by your thoughts. Say it boldly. In front of me, there is no such thing as a crime because of your words. Meng Ao looked at his face as if he had made up his mind. Sigh. To tell you the truth, I originally wanted to break up the dragon cult and then deceive my old friend to go to the mountain. Our castle is indeed lacking a strategist. Li Yunxin clapped his hands. Oh, you even left a way out. The castle. Why do you need a strategist? Can you tell me about this? He pointed at Ing Juren. In the eyes of the two martial artists, Li Yunxin, the people behind him who didn't speak and only stared at them with creepy eyes, the two cultivators just now and the person who appeared and left were all the same kind of people. Immortals, demons and demons. No matter what kind of fight they had, no matter who was strong or weak in their eyes, they were all terrifyingly strong, far beyond their understanding. But the two cultivators only asked him some questions casually. They weren't really interested. But the person in front of them, Ing Juren, had been in Jianghu for a long time. He knew that he seemed to be really interested. Once he knew this, he suddenly wasn't so afraid. Instead, it was like he was extremely afraid. A string in his heart broke. Not only was he not afraid, but he also felt, maybe he could grab something. The other party didn't belong to this world. The world he lived in was too mysterious, too magical. And as long as he got permission, he could reach out and grab something in that world. Maybe he could get something that everyone in this world would be jealous of. So he looked at Li Yunxin's expression and said in a low voice, I won't hide it from Sendo. The castle he was talking about was the Black Stockade Castle. The Black Stockade Castle is on Mount Chuyun. Mount Chuyun is 300 miles east of the city of Wei, separated from the Wilderness Mountain. Get to the point. Li Yunxin interrupted him. Everyone hasn't had dinner yet. Mainly, what kind of organization is your Black Stockade Castle? Does it have any anti-human tendencies? Sendo, you mean, what does our Black Stockade Castle do? Ing Juren asked tentatively. Li Yunxin patted his palm with his folding fan, turned around and said to the 5 demons with disappointment, Look. I like people who can understand me. It's hard to talk to you guys. Learn it well. After receiving his praise, Ing Ju heaved a sigh of relief. We are from Black Stockade Village. Our Black Stockade Castle is, Sendo doesn't eat the food of the common people, so he doesn't understand the suffering of the common people. But right now the Daqing state is already finished. Great. I like this tone. Li Yunxin sighed in admiration. So your Black Stockade Castle is a mafia-style organization that intends to stir things up. And the scale is quite large. Right now you've already started to consider the problem of personnel. So, are you planning to bring Lu Gongzan up the mountain and do something big? Are you planning to get rid of the Qing Emperor and become the Emperor yourself? Ing Juren was in a daze. He thought for a while before saying, Sendo, our black stockade castle is only planning to enforce justice on behalf of heaven. You know, right now. How many people are on the mountain now? Li Yunxin ignored him. 200 people. Great. How long have you been working on this? 200 desperados? Or old and young people? 200 people who can fight. 1,000 old, weak women and children. It's been more than 3 years since I started planning this. Li Yunxin stood up, took 2 steps back and let out a long breath. He stared at Ingjuren for a while, gave him a thumbs up and exclaimed, "You're AF*** King Genius." In the hinterland of the Daqing state 300 miles away from the city of Wei, a place where people won't starve to death if they put up with it, 1,000 people are going to rebel. Ingjuren hurriedly waved his hand. No, Sendo, I'm just acting on behalf of heaven. You come and work with me. There's no future in that place. Li Yunxin paced 2 steps on the spot. Qian Mountain, I've heard of this name. It's a remote place with many rocks and dangerous terrain, so there's not many people. So, no one will care about you for a while if you set up a stronghold there. But if you want to rebel, that place can't be a base. I guess it's a problem for you to eat now. Li Yunxin looked at him. That's settled. I'll let you 2 go back. You 2 go back and mobilize people, bring people to the city of Wei. Don't worry about what to do when you come to the city of Wei. 300 miles, you 2 go in batches. If you really come to me, you won't be able to leave in a month. At that time, I'll have the final say in the city of Wei. Ingjuren and Meng Ao were dumbfounded, but they really couldn't get a word in. When Li Yunxin finished, Ingjuren said again, Sendo, I'm really just acting on behalf of heaven. Li Yunxin seemed to be angry. He stared at him and pointed at him, young, shallow and childish. You said the Daqing state is doomed? Let me ask you, why do you think it's doomed? Do you think there are more farmers who lost their land and the business in the city is not doing well? You tell me, if the Qiao family wasn't so poor that they went crazy, they wouldn't need to send the head of the family to go out for the escort, to bet all their wealth on that escort. Those small escort agencies in the city of Wei were also set up. But what's the reason? Because they want to go to the Li state? Because the domestic small escort agencies can't do business anymore. I've been in the city of Wei for so long that I know, but only your simple feudal business thinking thinks it's doomed. Let me tell you now, it's called annexation. Land annexation, business annexation, the concentration of resources in the hands of the rich and powerful, and the shrinking of private capital. This is doomed, but it's not something you can see in your life. After the annexation, the rich and powerful can at least extend the life of the Daqing state for another 50 years. But the process of annexation will take another 50 years. So let me tell you, you have to think that the Daqing state is doomed every day, and when the Daqing state is doomed and when the refugees are everywhere, then rise up, you can wait for 100 years. But if you don't even have such a long-term and wrong judgment and really just think that some people can't live on anymore, and gather together to make them live a better life, Comrade Ingjuren, you have to remember this. As individuals, people may be polite, righteous and have a sense of shame and gratitude. But once people form a group, there is no sense of shame and morality to speak of. They will become naked animals of profit. The group will magnify their nature infinitely. In a country formed by groups, if they want land, they fight. If they can't win, they sit down and talk. If they lose, they beg for mercy and pretend to be weak. Once there is profit to speak of, even if someone rushed into your house and killed millions of people decades ago, you will still shake hands and make peace. This is the group of people. Naked interests are supreme and individual morality does not exist at all. Now they are not living well and have no food to eat, so they follow you to live well and eat. In the future, when you really let them live well and have enough to eat, they will stretch out their hands and ask you for more. You can't give it to them? Goodbye, sir, we're going down the mountain. No one will remember your kindness. If you want them to follow you, you have to brainwash them, give them a program and give them a distant but achievable hope. A group of people follow you up the mountain to rob houses, and then you tell them that you don't want to rebel. What will happen to them in the future? What about their sense of belonging? What about their collective sense of honor? So don't talk to me about enforcing justice on behalf of the heavens. You just want to rebel. Li Yunxin gave him a kick. Now stand up and follow this old Meng out of the city immediately. Go back and get people here. If you don't want to do it, I will either report you to the authorities, or I will personally demolish your house. Go now. The kick made Juren grimace in pain and he felt that his bones were about to break. He quickly stood up by holding onto the wall. He really didn't know what to say. It should be known that from the moment he spoke to him until now, only a quarter of an hour had passed. The two stood up and looked at each other. On one side, Li Yunxin was about to kick and drive him away, and on the other side the two wanted to say something. Just because of a sentence from Sendo, they were going to abandon their original stronghold and bring people to the city of Wei? 300 miles. Normally, when moving from one end of the alley to the other, it would take at least half a month on and off. Such a big matter, how could he treat it like a child's play? Just by himself, making the decision? But Li Yunxin was already impatient with their dawdling. With a wave of his sleeve, the two were carried by a gust of evil wind and were sent 2 or 3 streets away. In the wind they could hear him saying gloomily, "Think about what I said." They didn't know whether it was a blessing or a curse. When the alley finally quieted down, Li Yunxin was silent for a while, and put away the relaxed tone he used when he talked to Juren. He looked at the 5 demons behind him. Yunzi is planning how to deal with me. In his eyes, what happened today was just the first step. But in my eyes, the war has already begun. You have gotten much more from me than the other demons. Now it's time for you to repay me. He glanced at the 5 demons one by one and said, "I hope that after this war ends at least one of you can survive. Now you have to know something." The second day came. On the second day, when Li Yunxin said, "The war has already begun," it seemed that no one could feel the tense atmosphere except for him. It was even more relaxed than the previous days. Because at least before all the Taoist priests in the city of Wei died, Yunzi was cooperating with the dragon cult. Taoshi Road was still under construction. But it seemed that as a reward for killing the 2 Daotong cultivators last night, the Yu family came and said, "We can build the righteous canal in the farmstead of white beans in the southeast of the city." Building an irrigation system and building bridges and roads were one of the first requests of Li Yunxin. But after the Yu family went to see someone in the Shangqing Danding sect's office in the city of Wei, this matter was put aside. Now it was restarted. Of course, it was because the dragon cult advised people to do good, so so-and-so, so-and-so and so-and-so contributed a certain amount of money to build a righteous canal for the bean farm. The hierarch of the dragon cult had to show up. That day, a group of people stood beside the bean field that Li Yunxin and Lu Laodao had seen together. At least in the eyes of the nobles who were used to the splendor of the city of Wei, it was a boring and depressing affair. The sun was burning above their heads and the cicadas were screaming desperately. The muddy water from the paddy fields lay in the muddy ditches, where even toads did not like to wallow. 3 rich merchants in thin silk clothes surrounded Li Yunxin and stood on the ridge of the field. Behind them was a group of listless helpers who were waiting for this damn thing to end and go to work or avoid the heat. But the sallow and emaciated people who came from the farmstead by the side of the field now had a strange look on their faces. They did not mention the 3 merchants who paid, but only stared at Li Yunxin and mumbled some vague words, presumably to thank him or to praise him. The 3 merchants felt even more bored. But they could not turn around and leave. Because on the surface they were the ones who paid. But they were the shopkeepers of the shops under the Yu mansion, and they were only there to cover their ears and keep up appearances. So no matter how impatient they were, they knew that the hierarch of the dragon cult was the favorite of the master of the Yu family. Even if they were asked to jump into the field to help pour water, they had to grit their teeth, swallow their stomachs and hold their breath to do it. Now the hierarch of the dragon cult was in a good mood. He first said a few words to the people in the farmstead. He started with, "I'll say a little more, and I'll say a little more." In between he interspersed with, "I'll add one more, and there are 3 more points." The ending was a long and terrifying, "I'll say a few more words, and the last point." Finally, the grateful bean farmers lifted their sleeves to wipe their sweat, and looked up to see where the sun was now. When he finally finished a lot of tedious words, he announced that he would do the first shovel. Unfortunately, the hierarch of the dragon cult was a great person. He could say beautiful words, was handsome and had a good heart. But even so, he did not know how to build a canal. He first asked where to start, and the rich merchants behind him hurried the helpers as if they had been pardoned and answered. Then the hierarch pretended to count with his fingers, frowned, and said that the direction was not right. The righteous canal was a canal, It was so long and there was a long stream of water in it which contained dragon aura. If the direction of the dragon aura was not right, it was very likely to anger the vast sea and kiss the dragon prince. That was a big deal. Hearing this, the bean farmers were scared and didn't dare to say anything. The three rich merchants didn't listen at all and only wiped their sweat. The helpers listened, but they were the ones who built the canal on the other side of the rice field, so they knew that this was nonsense. But secretly, some smart people guessed the idea of the hierarch of the dragon cult. He just wanted to intimidate the bean farmers. Those bean farmers were poor. If you gave them benefits they could negotiate, but if not they would turn hostile and ignore you. They were the true wicked people. It seemed that the young dragon cult hierarch wanted to make those bean farmers feel that he was really unfathomable, so he said these frightening words to scare them. After scaring those wicked people, the dragon cult would come here to recruit more believers. They had already been treated well by the dragon cult, and when they thought of the mysterious hierarch, they wouldn't believe him anymore. So the helpers didn't say anything and just let the hierarch do whatever he wanted. He saw the sect leader take a shovel from an old Daoist accompanying him. It was an iron shovel. Then, ignoring the scorching sun and the dirt in the fields, he pretended to walk back and forth, muttering something. He dug a shovel on a ridge of the fields. Then he straightened his back, cheerfully looked at the crowd and waved his hand. Come, come, Mr. Liu, the second shovel. Don't forget the digger when eating beans and let the villagers remember your kindness. Hearing this, the wicked people clapped and cheered and laughed foolishly. Mr. Liu, who was called by the hierarch, was stunned. Under the gloating eyes of the other two, he forced a smile and walked over. The hierarch of the dragon cult didn't give him the shovel. Instead he said, "If I don't do the first stitch myself, the Dragon King will blame me." Then the two of them worked together to dig the second shovel. They thought this was the end of the matter. Who would have thought that this madman would actually call everyone over to dig together with him? 3 wealthy merchants and more than 50 skilled helpers were here to help. More than 200 bean farmers who were watching the scene. This madman called all of them over and they all dug with the shovel. At first, some people wanted to watch the fun to see how long he could last. But after watching for 2 hours, no one could laugh anymore. Those bean farmers who were laughing also couldn't laugh anymore. At first, they thought it was interesting to see the hierarch forcing people from the city of Wei to do rough work. Later, dozens of people went over and they all admired the hierarch. Because he really dug with the shovel for such a long time. In the end, the admiration turned into fear. This hierarch really had divine power. They had already dug half a mile. Although the digging was crooked, the hierarch didn't even sweat and didn't look tired. He dug 1 foot deep with every shovel, which meant he had used all his strength. When the last person let go, Li Yunxin straightened up. The hem of his white robe and trousers were covered with mud, and he didn't look handsome at all. But he smiled, stuck the shovel on the ground, opened his hands and said loudly, "The one we dug is the testimony of the relationship between the dragon cult and the villagers. I think it should be called the Divine Dragon Canal. In the future, the clear water in the canal will continue to flow, and the dragon cult will protect the villagers. What do you think?" Those simple and unruly bean farmers had already been convinced by the hierarch of the dragon cult, and they all said yes, yes, yes. Li Yunxin said with satisfaction, "Then I will carry the first bucket of water." The 3 rich merchants heard this and felt that they couldn't stand still anymore. So they worked from noon until the sky was full of colorful clouds and then they left. The so-called Divine Dragon Canal was glittering and beautiful. But it was not on the righteous canal at all. But the bean farmers who were full of satisfaction and admiration still wanted to keep it. The hierarch of the dragon cult was the first noble they had seen in their lives who knew how to do farm work. At night, Yunzi knew about this. He frowned and thought for a long time. He wanted to know what Li Yunxin was going to do. It couldn't be that simple. He wanted to intimidate them, make the bean farmers feel special and make them feel grateful and so on. Only stupid people would think like that. To gain respect and awe, doing things personally, and going deep into the people were always the stupidest ways. That would only make people think, "Oh, that's all." The real noble only needed to be high and mighty and people would give them respect and awe. Hatred wouldn't do that kind of stupid thing. What did he want to do? Chapter 179. Yunzi sat quietly until late at night and called someone in. It was a female cultivator. Her appearance was ordinary and her figure was not graceful. But she was a cultivator after all, so she always had an air of elegance. She received a small favor from Yunzi 10 years ago, so she didn't want to come now. But she was a timid person. Because she was timid she didn't want to come, and also because she was timid she came. She knocked on the door, pushed the door open and stood in the hall. She heard Yunzi, who was sitting in the dark, said, "About 100 miles away from the city of Wei, there is a southern mountain in the wilderness forest by Dongting Lake. There is a mountain god temple on the southern mountain, and there is a Taoist nun in the secular world named Xianxia. Go and invite the nun here. Take care of her belongings and bring all the important ones back." The female cultivator waited quietly for a moment. Seeing that Yunzi didn't have any other orders, she bowed and turned to go out. Yunzi was still sitting quietly in the dark. 2 hours passed like this. The sky was getting brighter and so was the room. The incense in the incense burner burned all night and now it was burned out. The door was pushed open. The female cultivator Qing Fuzi said to another person outside the door, "I don't want to hurt you. Don't struggle needlessly. The Taoist just wants to ask you a few questions." Yunzi slightly frowned, reached out his hand and grabbed the person outside the door and threw her to the ground. Qing Fuzi hurried in to see what was going on. But Yunzi had already asked directly, "What did you find?" The female cultivator was stunned and closed the door. She walked to Yunzi, took out a few things from her arms and showed them to him. "An elixir spell, but it's unorthodox and full of mistakes. An iron sword, a steel sword and a peachwood sword. They are all ordinary items. A jade pendant. Even if it's made of bad material, it's still an ordinary item. A talisman. It looks like it was made by the Shangqing Danding sect, and its power is not bad. But she can't use it now. There's also a bag of sweet potatoes and a wooden plate." Yunzi sighed and interrupted her. "Didn't you bring her here for anything else? Does she have a passage technique?" The Daoist magic mentioned by the cultivators was naturally not the crude tricks of the unruly Daoist priests. Qing Fuzi thought for a moment and answered seriously, "He raised his sword to stab me, but I knocked it away. I subdued her and searched her room first. At that time she put something in her mouth and swallowed it." Yunzi frowned slightly. "What is it?" "I couldn't see it clearly." Yunzi sighed again as if he really wanted to say something to this Qing Fuzi. But there was really nothing to say. He could only wave his hand helplessly. "All right. You've worked hard." Then he looked at Xianxia, who was lying on the ground. The female Daoist was thrown to the ground quite heavily. After all, he was just a mortal who practiced some superficial Daoist techniques, unlike Lu Laodao, who was a genius in Taoism. Therefore she couldn't recover from the fall for a long time. When Yunzi looked at her, she propped up her upper body. But she didn't know which part of her leg was injured, so she couldn't stand up. The female Daoist didn't seem to be willing to struggle to stand up. That would make her look very awkward. Courage was secondary, so she simply crossed her legs slowly and sat down as if she was meditating. Seeing her do all this, Yunzi had a premonition that the following questions would probably not be very pleasant. If she struggled to stand up, this kind of brave person was easy to deal with. If she curled up on the ground and shivered, this kind of coward was even easier to deal with. However, it was really difficult to deal with this woman. He asked first, "Do you know who I am?" Xianxia looked at him seriously and smiled slightly. "You hide in the dark and don't see anyone. How can I know who you are?" Yunzi also smiled. You won't recognize me even if you see me. Let me tell you, I'm the president of the Law Institute of the Langia Cave of Daotong, the enlightened immortal Yunzi. Now I want to ask you some questions. If you tell me the truth, I will give you the opportunity to enter my Langia Cave of Heaven. From then on, you will focus on practicing the divine heart technique and get hundreds of years of life. If you have good luck, you may be immortal and live as long as heaven and earth. If Sendo wants to ask, just ask. Xianxia took advantage of his pause to interrupt him. "I don't care much about cultivation." The green beetle on the side listened to her words and seemed to want to persuade her. But he held back. The morning sun rose and the room was filled with morning light. Yunzi's face gradually became clear. The Taoist in the truth state stared at Xianxia for a while and said calmly, "Cave of Heaven and School of Thought may sound very distant to you secular people. It's too profound and mysterious, but it makes you feel distant and estranged. It's not even as tempting as a bowl of rice placed in front of a starving person. You live in Nanshan and go up and down the mountain every day. If you practice the divine art, climbing the mountain is like walking on flat ground. It won't be more tiring than taking a leisurely stroll. You are a secular person, you will grow old and die. If you eat less, you will be hungry, and if you drink less, you will be thirsty. If you are exposed to the cold, you will be sick. Your eyes and ears will be blurred, your mouth will be dry, and your whole body will be sore. You won't know when you will recover or die from the illness. If you practice my divine heart technique, all these will be far away from you. I won't talk to you about longevity or divine art. I only want to tell you that if you join my Taoism, your life will be comparable to that of a noble, and you will have fewer troubles and worries of the secular people. Shirkuizi sighed softly. I am not afraid of troubles and worries. Sendo wants to ask, just ask. If I can answer, I will answer. If I can't, I won't answer even if I die. Yunzi was silent for a while and said, Okay. Then let me ask you first, that Lu Gongzan, what kind of technique is he practicing? Divine heart technique. Shirkuizi answered. My Dao Tong has 54 divine heart techniques and there are 54 Kenzo techniques. Yunzi said, From what I can see, the Dao technique that Lu Gongzan is practicing doesn't belong to any of the 108 divine heart techniques. Then you are saying that he is practicing the Dao technique of green elixir. The Dao technique of green elixir that has been passed down? I don't know. Shirkuizi closed her eyes. Yunzi sighed. If you enter my heavenly cave and go through the tribulation of love and desire, you will know how laughable your current thoughts are. An infatuated son and resentful daughter, risking life and death for love, that person might not be the person you think. If you die today, that Lu Gongzan will cultivate for 100 years in the future, and he will be in love with another woman. Will you die a worthy death? Shirkuizi widened her eyes and looked at Yunzi. I know. But, what does it have to do with you? Qingfuzi looked at Shirkuizi, then at Yunzi. The Truth Realm Daoist smiled and closed his eyes. After a moment of silence, he sighed and asked, What did she swallow? Yes, Qingfuzi answered. Cut it open. Qingfuzi was taken aback and looked at Yunzi again. Daotong wants to vanquish demons. This woman had a crucial clue. If he refused to confess, he would be helping the villain and colluding with the demons. It doesn't count as indiscriminate killing. Cut it open and take it out. He closed his eyes and said no more. Qingfuzi's expression changed. He first looked at Yunzi, then at Shirkuizi. But, it seemed that this matter was only related to her. Yunzi calmly closed his eyes to rest. Shirkuizi also closed her eyes and sat on the ground. He seemed to be the most flustered. After all, not every cultivator had killed before. In other words, there weren't many cultivators who had killed before. Qingfuzi hesitated for a while, then plucked up his courage and said, Daoist priest, I think we should try to persuade her again. Yunzi opened his eyes a little and glanced at her. It's useless. This woman was a person with a firm will. I've seen many people like her. Don't waste your breath. Qingfuzi opened his mouth. Daoist priest's magic power is very strong. This kind of small matter. Do you need me to deal with such a small matter? Yunzi glared at her sternly. What's the use of you? Qingfuzi could only sigh sadly and walk to Shirkuizi's side. The female Daoist priest of the mountain god temple didn't look at her. She was still sitting with her eyes closed and reciting Ziwei, the great scripture of eternal tranquility, in a low voice. The female cultivator glanced at her and sighed. Alas, alas. Then she turned her head away and reached out to touch Shirkuizi's arm. Shirkuizi still didn't move. Her lips were tightly pursed. The female cultivator stopped when she touched her wrist. Then she used her little finger to make a vertical stroke on her wrist. Her fingernail immediately scratched Mo Tienga's blood vessels. But before blood gushed out, the female cultivator had already stuck a talisman on Shirkuizi's wrist. Then she hurriedly took 2 steps back as if she was extremely afraid. Yunzi frowned. What are you doing? Qingfuzi looked at Yunzi with a sad and aggrieved expression. Daoist priest, I'm afraid of blood. Yunzi was stunned. Then he looked at Shirkuizi. He found that the female Daoist priest who was calm and collected before was no longer reciting the scripture. She widened her eyes and tried to tear the talisman on her wrist with one hand. However, the talisman couldn't be torn off, let alone torn off. The words on the yellow paper were originally very faint in cinnabar, but now they were getting redder and redder. The redness was so dazzling, and the strokes were so full that it looked like blood was about to drip out. Only then did Yunzi re-evaluate the green beetle. It was indeed afraid of blood. Therefore, she had to use the talisman to suck Xianxia's blood first. During this process, the woman was still conscious and alive. She could only watch her own life slowly pass away. The Daoist priest in the true state laughed loudly. You are also a wonderful person. Xianxia looked at Yunzi blankly. Then she looked at Xianxia. The female Daoist priest tried to tear the talisman 4 or 5 times, and after 2 breaths she collapsed. Her face was like a dried corpse. Her eyes were not closed and her mouth was slightly open. Obviously she had suffered a great deal before she died. At this moment Xianxia was relieved. He walked briskly to Xianxia's body, and used his fingernails to cut open her Daoist robe, underwear, skin, muscles and stomach. Then he reached into her stomach and took out a roll of white silk that had lost its original color. At this moment she didn't frown, nor did she feel uncomfortable. She didn't care about the filth on the silk. She stretched it out and looked at it carefully before showing it to Yunzi. The Daoist priest in the true state frowned in disgust. "Read it for me." Xianxia took 2 steps back and slowly read it to him. It was the incantation of the water cloud force. But many parts of it were blurred and turned into a lump. Xianxia could only recognize 30 to 40% of it. But it was enough for Yunzi, who was an expert in Taoism. He closed his eyes and thought for a while. Then he said in a low voice, "It's not the 108 methods. But it seems to be the divine heart technique. The divine heart technique has something in common. So it's the Taoism of painting. That Lu Gongzan cultivated the Taoism of painting. He is a Daoist of painting." Xianxia looked at him in confusion. But Yunzi didn't need her to understand, he just said it out of habit. This would make his thinking clearer. "So what they are doing outside the city in the fields, The Daoist priest in the true state suddenly understood. He squinted his eyes and his eyes flashed with danger and excitement. What a big plot. That Long Sun, that Daoist, are using the land around the city of Wei as a scroll to draw a painting array. Xianxia blinked. She didn't really understand. Because she was a low-level cultivator, she didn't have the chance to see the Daoist of painting. Everything about the Daoist of painting, painting school and painting saint was taboo. Even Yunzi didn't know much about it. But he was a Daoist priest in the true state, the president of the Law Academy of the Paradise Scripture, and he had contact with the Daoist of painting in Daotong. After contact he understood, he could infer many things from one instance and thus knew. We in Daotong write talismans. Everything in the world has a real name, we write their real names to mobilize the power of heaven and earth. Yunzi said in a low and slow voice. But the painting school takes a different path. They draw the spirits of all things in the world. Although the inheritance in Taoism can't be compared with the Daotong Kenzo, Taoism is also mysterious. Alas, it can be considered as the great Tao. These things are hard to say. It's just that our talismans are like skeletons and the paintings of the painting school are like flesh and blood. Using the land around the city of Wei as a scroll. What a big move. Yunzi thought for a while. This can explain why Hatred and Lao Dao had to dig such a long canal when they were building it. It wasn't digging, it was painting. When we write talismans we need to pour in spiritual power, and so does the painting of the painting school. Such a long canal in fact is just a drawing. Yunzi sighed again. What a big move. So this was his real purpose. Absorbing the power of faith, preaching and gaining the belief of the followers were all just a cover-up. Even I was almost fooled. In fact, Yazi doesn't want the power of wish. He painstakingly created a divine dragon sect and deliberately showed me a lot of flaws, all in order to make me relax my vigilance, making me think that he only wants the power of wish. Making me think that he built bridges and roads and benefiting the people was just to get people's worship. But the real goal is to use the canals, roads and bridges that have been built as markings, to draw a grand formation. Painting school, painting saint, Xianxia didn't know much about these things. Or rather, he didn't understand them at all. The painting saint and the painting school had been destroyed for 2,000 years. Even the accurate records of the events of 2,000 years ago would be distorted beyond recognition, not to mention the things that Daotong and Kenzo had the intention to wipe out. Chapter 180. Although he didn't understand these things, he understood Daoist techniques. Qing Fuzi couldn't help but frown. Daoist priest, there is one thing. When we write true talismans, every stroke is imbued with spiritual power. This spiritual power is our own spiritual power. Then those strokes are combined to form a true name, and then a small formation is formed. The spiritual power flows in the formation, growing and multiplying, and then it absorbs the spiritual power of heaven and earth from the surroundings. This is a suitable talisman. But he draws here and there. I don't know the Daoist techniques of painting. But since Daoist priests said that it has something in common with heaven's will, then it shouldn't be too different from the art of talismans. Then if the imprints and drawings aren't connected, the spiritual power can't form a formation. Then how can the drawings work? Yunzi squinted his eyes, looking into the distance, as if he was looking at hatred. So this is the brilliance of that dragon son. Alas, there is such a character among the demons, and we only know that he is cruel and unreasonable. If he is not a demon, if that Qing Liangji also has such wisdom, alas. He sighed repeatedly. This demon. I have to kill him. This kind of hatred can't live in this world and can't live next to my bed. Qing Fuzi quietly listened to him lamenting. After he finished lamenting, he said, so this is a plan to kill 3 birds with 1 stone. The power of hope. The talismans we write are imbued with spiritual power, so they are suitable. In simpler terms, for a talisman to work, there are 2 basic conditions. First, every stroke needs spiritual power. The spiritual power in the strokes has 2 functions: to guide the flow of spiritual power after the formation is formed, and to ensure that each stroke is not a casual stroke of the secular people, but a Daoist technique. Secondly, this talisman also needs to have sufficient spiritual energy to immerse the entire talisman in spiritual energy. You guys don't know this. Do you know why? Because cultivators below the emptiness realm can't control the big formation, they only need to write on the talisman. Daotong talismans are custom-made to take care of you guys. But if you just write on a regular talisman, the second condition is easily met. The world is full of spiritual power. In fact, the talisman you write is already immersed in spiritual power, so you don't need to think about this problem. But after reaching the transcendent state, cultivators can do another thing. Make a big formation. Just like what hatred did, he used the land around the city of Wei as a paper to make a big formation. This is a cultivator's great skill. When he and Daoist Danqing went to dig the canal, they were actually pouring their spiritual energy into the canal. That satisfied the first point. Spiritual power is imbued in every stroke. You can pay attention to this point later. Whether they repair the bridge or pave the road, Yazi and that Taoist priest Danqing will definitely do it themselves. Every road and bridge is planned and designed by them. As for the others, they don't need to do the work themselves. That's undoubtedly a smokescreen. True and false, false and real. This is Dragon Sun's usual method. This hatred, scheming and cautiousness are really rare in the world. Then, the second point, this talisman or painting scroll is going to be soaked in spiritual energy. Qing Fuzi seemed to be fascinated. In fact, compared to the intrigue, what she was really interested in was this. This was the profoundness of the Tao. The second point, That's exactly what I wanted to say. Yunzi sighed in admiration. If I want to make a big array, the best choice is the city of Wei. There were 300,000 people in the city of Wei, and the yang energy was abundant, which could be transformed into spiritual energy with a little effort. Once the city of Wei was used as the scroll, the talisman was soaked in the spiritual power transformed from the yang qi of 300,000 people in the city of Wei. But this hatred, he's really an ambitious person. He will only use this city of Wei with its soaring yang energy as the finishing touch, as the eye of the array. Then the bigger scroll than the city of Wei, including the cultivated land around the city of Wei, where will the spiritual energy come from? Yunzi stood up while saying, from the power of faith and wish of those farmers and farmers. At this moment the power of faith may not be enough. But don't forget that making clouds and summoning rain is the special skill of the dragons. At that time, when the dragon sun ascends the altar of the dragon god cult and summons the rain with a loud shout, those farmers who are anxious about the bean seeds, especially in this year's harvest situation where people are going to starve to death, how strong will their faith and power of will be? The big array will be completed. Speaking of this, Yunzi finally couldn't hold back the excitement in his heart, and suddenly raised his arms. Suddenly the spiritual qi in the room was turbulent and the wind was strong. All the doors and windows were opened, and the sunlight from outside the room instantly filled the whole room. And this Yunzi figured everything out and laughed heartily. Good. 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 What an unparalleled demon, Lord Tongtun. You deserve to be my Yunzi's opponent. You have the guts of a dragon and tiger, and I have the heart of a zither and sword. I'll let you die a glorious death on that day. Ha ha ha. Qing Fuzi looked at Yunzi in a daze. He still didn't quite understand what he was talking about. At the same time, Yunzi was not the only one who laughed. There was also Wang Xing, the one who opened a calligraphy and pen shop in front of the abandoned palace square on the street of the old city. His legal wife was the daughter of a concubine from the fourth branch of the Yu mansion. According to Li Yunxin, she didn't look good. But originally he couldn't climb up to a high branch. When the Wang family was on good terms with the master of the fourth branch, the family was still in decline. But when it came to his father's generation, the family was not only in decline, but collapsed. But the master of the fourth branch was planning to recommend a son of the family to be filial to the Wei River mansion, so he fulfilled his wish. The master of the Yu mansion was a man of his word, and he didn't despise the poor son of an old friend. This was a good reputation. Then Wang Xing didn't get what he wanted, and even asked the young lady of the Yu mansion to sell her dowry to keep up appearances. Until one night he met a strange man in the calligraphy and pen shop in front of the abandoned palace square. The strange man gave him the prescription of the black medicine. He was lucky enough to succeed. After a few days of preparation he actually succeeded. But this kind of thing, even if it was done, was useless in daily life. But soon it was said that the Yu mansion was going to help the dragon cult build bridges, pave roads and cut stones in the mountains. Wang Xing knew that his black medicine was powerful, and he remembered that the strange man said before he left that night, "In a few days there will be a chance for you to show your talent." He didn't care who the strange man was or what he wanted to do with him. He shamelessly ran to the fourth branch's mansion, and after a lot of shouting he finally saw the steward and told him about his situation. Empty talk was naturally no proof. Fortunately, the steward watched his wife grow up, and although he didn't like him he still loved his young lady. So he frowned and followed him to experience. Then he ran back to the Yu mansion and told them that the master had gone. How powerful was the black medicine? The black gunpowder prescription that Li Yunxin gave him? Actually it wasn't. There weren't even any skilled stonemasons who used traditional methods to mine the stones. However, in this matter of the Yu family cooperating with the divine dragon cult, everyone wanted to put in some effort to win Yu family's favor. Moreover, it was also a good thing to have a good relationship with a rising cult. It was said that the person behind the dragon cult was the master of the Xianxia Danding sect in the city of Wei. The master of the fourth branch was worried that he didn't have a way to please his elder brother, and now his son-in-law, whom he had long forgotten, sent a good chance. This was a great joy. He called him to the mansion, talked to him and asked for the prescription. Wang Xing learned to be obedient at this time, and refused to hand over the prescription even if he died. His father-in-law had no choice but to ask him to go with him to see the clan leader, Master Yu. This was Wang Xing's great joy. It was on such a morning that Wang Xing planned to go out. He first went to the fourth branch to see his father-in-law, Mount Tai, and then to see the most powerful person in the Yu family. The day before yesterday he met his father-in-law and received some money. When he came back he cut 3 caddies of meat and stewed it in the pot. Wang Xing, his wife and the servant girl were so full that their stomachs were round, and they kept saying that they would never eat meat again. But when they woke up this morning with empty stomachs, they had long forgotten the taste of last night. They heated up the meat soup and meat dregs and cooked a pot of white rice, mixed it with the lard from the meat and wolfed it down. Wang Xing ate until his head was steaming. He untied his clothes and walked to the eaves in front of the door. Looking at the rising sun, he thought about the possible riches and honor, and his chest was filled with heroic spirit. With heroic spirit he was in the mood to write poetry. But after holding it in for a long time he still couldn't say a word. He simply laughed out loud, feeling very carefree. His life had finally turned from the worst to the best. His wife sat on the porch and looked at him with a rare smile. She didn't frown like before, scolding him for not doing proper work and not finding a good job to make money. The servant girl was cleaning up the bowls and chopsticks in the hall. Seeing that the two of them weren't quarreling, she pursed her lips and smiled. She planned to clean up the table, help her master put on his clothes and hat and send him out to the Yu mansion. The small courtyard wasn't big. With the thin bamboo, there were 2 patches of weeds and 2 hens about to lay eggs in the courtyard. And 3 people. The next moment Wang Sheng's laughter suddenly stopped. It was as if he was choking. Then he suddenly turned his head. His wife looked at him in confusion, asking him what was wrong. The servant girl also stopped what she was doing. Seeing Wang Sheng's suddenly wooden expression, she wondered if he had forgotten to prepare something. Under the gazes of the 2 women, Wang Sheng didn't say anything. He walked straight to the side of the thin bamboo in the courtyard. He stretched out his hand and chopped off a branch as thick as a thumb. His arm bent again and the branch pierced into his neck. His expression was solemn and calm. Staring at his wife, he turned his wrist again and shook it hard, so that the branch pierced deeper and destroyed his windpipe, blood vessels and Dao Tong. Then he let go and fell to the ground with a thud. Blood hissed out from his neck. His wife and the servant girl were stunned where they stood. They stared at him for a long time, then looked at each other. The young lady of the Yu family fainted without a sound, and the servant girl screamed desperately. A gust of chilly wind swirled in the courtyard and went straight out the door. When this insignificant interlude occurred, Yu Yunzi had already summoned some people and issued some orders. Then he stood in the courtyard and couldn't help but laugh 3 times, because it was really carefree. He actually met such an enemy, and a demon at that. There were a few smart people in Daotong, but he would never treat them as enemies. At most they were just opponents. Maybe in the future, when there were enough interests involved, that kind of situation might happen, but not now. As for demons, great demons above the true state were the key points. They were related to Daotong's plans for the world, so he couldn't touch them easily. Great demons were all idiots, at least in his opinion. Yunzi was a genius but had nowhere to show his strength. He was not as useful as those civil and military officials in the secular world. But now he met this hatred. It was like meeting a worthy opponent, and he could try his best without any scruples and show the greatest amount of malice, all with the aim of killing the other party. How carefree was this? But it was only carefree. He didn't have any inexplicable feeling of mutual respect. Enemies were enemies. In his opinion, there was nothing to respect. If they were worthy of respect, then why not be friends? Because of interests or because of necessity? For a true state cultivator, it was very rare for them to be forced to do something. Because he was the most powerful cultivator among over 1 billion people in the known world. One of less than 1,000 people. He preferred to completely crush and knock down his opponent after carefree. How similar. This was the method that Long Sun used on Liangzi. And he also deeply loved this Tao. What a lovely enemy. Yunzi looked at the direction of Long Sun in the city of Wei, shook his head with a smile and turned to walk back to the house. At this moment, a gust of wind whirled and rolled up a few fallen leaves on the flagstone ground in the courtyard, to the feet of Qing Fuzi, who was standing beside Yunzi. The female cultivator suddenly shivered. It was very rare for a cultivator to shiver. This was because they were no longer bothered by worldly ailments. The moment Yunzi turned around, he noticed this and asked one more question. What's wrong? Qing Fuzi turned around and looked at him calmly. When will you kill Long Sun? The tone was calm and very familiar. This was the tone that Yunzi often used. It was the tone that high-ranking and powerful people usually used. After hearing this, the cultivator in the true state took a step back, and a layer of faint light appeared on his body. He looked up and down at Qing Fuzi, and said in a low voice, "Who are you?" "You have a close relationship with Qing Liangzi. So I am the same person as him." Qing Fuzi said calmly, "My name is Lin Liangzi." This sounded like a very strange Taoist name. But because it was strange, Yunzi was a little relieved. Because Qing Liangzi had mentioned to him 2 other people in the Freemasonry. One was called Hai Liangzi and the other was called Li Liangzi. Both were very strange Taoist names. After Lin Liangzi revealed his identity, he immediately returned to the topic. He looked straight at Yunzi and repeated in an unquestionable tone, "He must die. The sooner the better." Chapter 181. Yunzi didn't get angry because of his tone and suggestion. Because he knew that if this Lin Lizhu was really Lin Lizhu, then the power behind him was very mysterious. Smart people didn't need friends, but they didn't need enemies either. However, he was a Daoist in the true state. Except for the two sages, no one in the world could talk to him so arrogantly. Therefore Yunzi smiled. "Are you ordering me or begging me?" Different from Qing Lizhu, who was often emotionally unstable, Lin Lizhu was calm and composed, like a Daotong or Kenzo cultivator who had gone through all kinds of tribulations. He made Qing Fuzi's body emit a calm and low female voice. "Neither. I'm just giving you a positive suggestion. Because it's more troublesome for me to do it myself, and I don't have a long-term plan like you in the city of Wei. Since it's a suggestion, don't be in a hurry." Yunzi raised his eyebrows and a little excitement rose in his heart again. It was a feeling that he hadn't experienced for a long time, 100 years. "Dragon's son is a wonderful person and I want to play with him. Qing Lizhu of your sect died in his hands, and he was also one of my few friends. Since your sect wants revenge, then don't be in a hurry. When he's at his most arrogant, smash him into dust, that's the most thorough revenge." Lin Lizhu shook his head without hesitation. "I want to kill him not to avenge Qing Lizhu, but because he knows something he shouldn't know and is trying to do something he shouldn't do, which is extremely dangerous. I still earnestly advise your lordship to kill him at once, preferably tonight. My sect will thank you for your kindness in the future, and you will be rewarded handsomely." Yunzi frowned slightly, and after thinking for a while he said, "Tell me first, what did he do that he shouldn't have done?" Lin Lizhu stared at him with a pair of calm eyes. The owner of this pair of eyes, whom Yunzi thought was slow and stupid a quarter of an hour ago, and said, "If you know the answer to this question, then you will also appear on my kill list." Yunzi sneered, "What a big tone." "Just the truth," perfected Yunzi. "This is not a threat." "Then I'll give you a suggestion. Don't even think about killing him." Yunzi narrowed his eyes and looked at the unfamiliar Qing Fuzi. "He's my plaything. He will die the way I want him to die. You dare to make me lose the pleasure that I haven't had in 100 years. Previously I liked Qing Liang. That person was interesting, and then I looked at the sect behind him. Do you think the Langya Paradise's first seat of law needs a generous reward from you? Frogs in the well don't know themselves." With that he flicked his sleeves and entered the room. Qing Fuzi, whose body had been taken over by Lin Lizhu, stood in the courtyard in a daze for a while before saying patiently, "Perhaps he isn't the person you think he is. Maybe he had more secrets. If you insist on delaying his death, then I hope you will be more fully prepared. Do not fail." What answered him was a sneer. Qing Fuzi sighed and then fell softly to the ground. A gust of chilly wind swirled around him and he went out the door. "If I'm not mistaken, things will go smoothly," Li Yunqin said to Lu Laodao. As he spoke, he furrowed his brows. Now that he had fallen back to the beginner level of the transcendent state, the sudden change made him very uncomfortable. The discomfort was not only psychological but also physical. The body was like a container and the spiritual energy was like the water in the container. As the spiritual energy increased bit by bit, the container was gradually filled up. As it got bigger, all kinds of possible cracks were repaired. However, if the water in the container was suddenly emptied, the container would not feel good. It might even be like a fragile glass container that was suddenly sucked out of the air, and the container would be crushed in an instant. "Brother Xane, you're right. It's going well. This morning the people from the Yu family said that they are in a hurry to build our headquarters on Taoshi Road, and that they are going to build bridges and roads outside the city. There are no restrictions on the location and scale. We can do whatever we want." Lu Laodao looked at him worriedly. "Brother Xane, with your current condition, do you still want to go by yourself? If I don't go by myself, how can I infuse the spiritual energy?" Li Yunqin stood up. His lips were pale. He smiled as he walked out of the door. "This is not the time to kill those swordsmen in the wild forest. I'll draw a painting for you to do the finishing touches. It's a shoddily made thing and it has a high tolerance for mistakes. But now we have to deal with Yunzi, the enlightened master. It's scary. After a few steps he felt that something was wrong, so he turned around and went back into the house. To get out of the city he still had to use the name of building bridges and roads. The long robe looked beautiful, but it was not suitable. It was better to wear it short. Old Daoist Lu took the clothes he had changed out of, redid his hair bun for him, and helped him change into new clothes. Therefore we can't make any mistakes in each stroke. If a single stroke went awry, the array would be finished. Yunzi thinks that he has seen through me and is determined to defeat me. What do you think he is thinking? Li Yunxin put on his clothes and stretched his body. He winked at Lu Laodao. I told him how I killed Qing Liangzi and he really remembered it. What a narrow-minded guy. He hates me so much that he wants to play with me like a mouse. He walked out of the door. He's the same as that Qing Liangzi. Lu Laodao followed behind him and listened to him, but there was still some worry in his eyes. Because this time seemed to be different. In the past, when he schemed against prefectural magistrate Li and Lu Ling, Lu Laodao felt that he had no chance of winning. When he was desperate he didn't care much. A little hope could brighten his heart. Now that he knew Brother Xian's means, he was told the inside story in detail. He felt that his plan was exquisite, his scheming was deep, and it was extremely terrifying. But because of this he also knew that Yunzi and Li Yunxin were exchanging blows. He felt that the two were so intelligent that they were almost monsters. If it wasn't for the roundworms in their stomachs, it was really hard to say who would win. Maybe today when they were complacent Yunzi already knew everything? This feeling made Lu Laodao feel perturbed. But he saw joy from the heart on Li Yunxin's face. It was as if everything in this world was boring. Only when he fought with such a dangerous opponent on a steel wire between cliffs with a sharp knife could he feel that life was lively and bright again. Although Lu Laodao didn't want to think like this, he gradually knew a fact, that was, Brother Xian didn't seem to be a normal person. This kind of mentality made him feel unhappy. But he knew that Li Yunxin was a guy who could read people's minds by looking at their faces, so he didn't want to worry him at this time. When he walked out of the door he found something new to talk about so that he could distract himself. This morning Mr. Li came to say that the young master of the Yu family, Yu Meng, wanted to see you and couldn't be stopped. But when he was walking here something happened to the fourth branch of the Yu family. Now he has to come on behalf of Master Yu, so he really can't come. Thinking about it, I haven't seen him for a long time and I didn't thank him for saving my life that time. Lu Laodao said as he walked in the warm morning sun. After walking for a while he felt that his body gradually became hot. What a coincidence. But he was interrupted by Li Yunxin. What happened to the fourth branch? Pausing for a moment he added, is that Wang Mingde dead? Lu Laodao was very surprised that Brother Xian was interested in this kind of thing, but he could always change the topic. After thinking for a while he said, I'm not sure about the name, but there's someone surnamed Wang. He married a concubine's daughter from the fourth branch. He hasn't been happy. I didn't tell him anything, I just saw him from afar. That time I went to the fourth branch to do a painting and I saw him from afar. A steward tried to seduce him, but he didn't even let him drink water. This is also unsatisfactory. This time he said he made some medicine and I heard that it could be used to build a road in the mountain. He said he would see him this morning, but he committed suicide in the morning. Lu Laodao frowned. If you ask me, maybe he finally felt that he had a chance to make a name for himself, but the old man of the fourth branch wanted to take his prescription. After many years of depression he was narrow-minded, so he made up his mind to commit suicide and caused a big trouble. I pity that wife of his. Lu Laodao talked endlessly, not noticing Li Yunxin's eyes. Li Yunxin's face calmed down and his eyes became clear. Sure enough, a thunder that he left casually was triggered. The dark thunder had nothing to do with Yu Yunzi, Ling Kongzi, Qi-Wen Yazi and Dongting Lord. It had nothing to do with what he was about to do in the city of Wei. It was just because he felt that the quantum leap was weird, and the organization behind him was weird, and this world was even weirder according to the limited history he knew. So he randomly found a good-for-nothing person and threw him a thunder. Now it exploded. Did this mean that he accidentally had that absurd idea? It was true. Lu Laodao turned and saw his face and was stunned. He stopped talking. Brother Xian, what's wrong? Nothing. Li Yunxin squinted his eyes and looked around subconsciously. Everyone in the Yu mansion knew that he and Lu Laodao didn't like to be disturbed, so all the maids and servants were dismissed. Now the two were walking on the busy street going to the city gate to meet the people who were building the bridge today. There was nothing special on the street. Only he would occasionally hear passers-by mentioning the divine dragon cult. The sun was shining and the blue sky was dotted with a few clouds. Li Yunxin let out a sigh and also to cover up his thoughts and said, Yunzi's people went to Nanshan earlier. Lu Laodao was stunned and after a moment of silence he said, Li Yunxin didn't say anything else and just walked side by side with him on the street. After a while Lu Laodao said, will she be suspicious? After all, the dragon cult started trouble in Nanshan. Now we are going to the city of Wei, leaving her there alone. Master Lu thought for a moment, then Yu Yunzi will think that we are cold-hearted and don't care about her life and death. But she will find the water cloud force. We shouldn't have left the person with the water cloud force on Nanshan Hill unprepared. This flaw is a bit obvious. Li Yunxin shook his head slightly. This is your thought but not his. You and Shirquizi think the cloud force is a treasure, but Yunzi must have many scripts that are more profound than that. He has seen a lot. You won't think it's something great. He wasn't a wild Taoist like you were. Wild Taoists struggled to find the true scriptures so you can understand their feelings. He used to be a high-ranking official, and he was brought back to the mountain by the Grand Master of the Cave Heaven who went down the mountain. His starting point is different so he can't understand your feelings. Lu Laodao said, and didn't ask more. He just walked gloomily. When they were about to reach the city gate and saw two rich businessmen coming to greet them from afar, Li Yunxin turned his head and sighed, you really? I am not the kind of person who doesn't like to leave my name after doing good deeds. I like people praising me the most. If you can't be grateful to me then say thank me. What's there to be embarrassed about? Lu Laodao was stunned and then he felt a warm feeling in his heart. He didn't know whether he should smile with Li Yunxin, or keep a straight face or shed tears of gratitude. Finally he walked in front of Li Yunxin seriously, bowed deeply and said solemnly, thank you Brother Exon. Li Yunxin didn't help him up and accepted the bow seriously. He grinned, you're welcome. Well, you thank me and I accept your bow, don't worry about it in the future. We don't owe each other anything. Finish the work today. Bah. They did 4 big things in one day. The first one was to build a bridge over a small river called Bright Stream. The stream was quiet when the weather was good, but it would flood when it rained. Although it didn't rain often, the dragon cult master insisted on doing things here, so they had no choice but to obey. Li Yunxin and Lu Laodao personally laid the cornerstone. They used 81 blue stones to look like water and said it was used to stabilize feng shui. Then there were 3 other roads. The first 2 roads went smoothly, but when it came to the 3rd road, the dragon cult master said they had to go through a mountain. It wasn't a big mountain but a small hill. Originally they could have gone around the hill, but the dragon cult master insisted on going through it. After going through it they would have to cut through the mountain. According to the locals there weren't any stones in the small hill, only sand. It wasn't impossible to cut through the mountain, but it would take some time and manpower. The dragon cult master smiled when he heard that. He immediately ordered everyone to stand far away, and only he stood on the spot, exhaled and exerted force. A ray of golden light shot out from his palm and immediately carved out a path in the middle of the small mound. This was the first time he performed a miracle, and also the first time people saw a powerful Daoist technique. At this time, the rich merchants who had been accompanying him and even Mr. Li who was in the mansion, realized. This young man wasn't a puppet. However, in Yunzi's eyes there was only one key point. The 3rd road was a straight line, a line that went through the small hill. It also had to be a straight line, to form a part of the painting. Because of this he didn't take a detour and because he impatiently displayed his divine power. Chapter 182. Building bridges, roads and canals were not something that could be done in a day. But both Li Yunxin and Yunzi just needed a start. On the 16th of June, everything was almost finished. But it began. From May 22nd, when the dragon cult entered the city, to June 16th, when the headquarters of the dragon cult in Taoshi Road was about to be completed, there were 16 canals, 19 roads and 6 bridges outside the city of Wei. 24 other temples were built in different places. This was a huge project in any country in the world. However, both sides knew that these things did not necessarily have to be done, and the people who were grateful and felt that the heavens had bestowed them with blessings were actually just pawns. Both sides were using it not for them but for themselves. At the same time, in these 25 days, 36 low-level Daoist priests were killed. 21 of them died in the hands of the dragon cult. The other 15 people gradually realized that something was wrong, because their companions were killed by the demons, but the enlightened immortal Yunzi asked them to be patient again and again. The demons kept attacking them and they had almost no means to protect themselves. These arrogant cultivators finally lost their pride, and suspected that Yunzi had ulterior motives. Fortunately, they still had brains. They did not question Yunzi face to face, but chose to escape from the city of Wei in one night. But within an hour, these 15 people were killed by Yunzi's doppelgangers one by one, and their souls were destroyed. Therefore, on the night of the 16th of June, Li Yunxin met Yunzi again in the residence of the Yu mansion. The enlightened immortal seemed to be very satisfied, and he did not even use his spirit to transform into the real body, but his real body. Right now he was truly alone in the city of Wei. He was the only one left in the entire city of Wei of the Pill Cauldron sect of the Xianxia sect. The strange deaths of the cultivators had long scared the servants who knew a thing or two out of their wits. They had all fled to the Egret continent. Li Yunxin had nearly 10,000 followers in the city of Wei, and more than 500 people came to the main altar to worship every day, although many of them came because of the embroidery of the Qi made of silver foil. When they met again tonight, Li Yunxin was still leaning on the rattan chair and looking at Yunzi lazily. "Your people are all dead, yet you still dare to come and see me like this." Two boys transformed from flowers moved Daoist Master Daoist's seat, so that he could sit opposite Li Yunxin. Then Yunzi said calmly, "They didn't do much when they were alive, but they were more useful when they were dead. I have come to tell you about the sacrificial offering to heaven when the altar is completed." "It's a sacrifice to Shinryu." Li Yunxin snorted. "A sacrifice to Shinryu." Yunzi looked at him. "I hope that when you ascend the altar tomorrow it will rain. In this way your power will be increased and your followers will be more devout. The city of Wei is the center of Hejian land of the Daqing state. A heavy rain to save the people will be a miracle in Hejian land. It's much more reliable to spread the news from the city of Wei than from a remote place." Li Yunxin frowned and looked at him. "You are so kind." "It's a matter of mutual benefit." Yunzi said, "You will be the first god to show up in a big city and perform a miracle on a large scale. Then the Dao Tong will realize the seriousness of the matter. Then I will report the news of the cultivators being killed, and after the reprimand I will still be in charge of the city of Wei. Then the Dao Tong will send real capable cultivators, not the previous useless ones. At that time you will have to leave the city of Wei, but your story has been spread by those followers. Even the Dao Tong and the government can't get rid of those people's hidden thoughts. In essence, you have no loss. We all get what we want." "Sounds good." Li Yunxin yawned. "Then it's settled. You can leave." Yunzi didn't leave. Instead he sat upright for a while. "The Lord Tongtian shouldn't be such a person. Is the Lord Tongtian trying to provoke me?" he asked. Li Yunxin squinted at him and ignored him. "It's good for us to live in peace." Yunzi said again in a serious tone, "If someone else came to the city of Wei, he might not sit back and do nothing. I'm the best choice for the Lord Tongtian." Li Yunxin waved his hand impatiently. "Oh, got it." But Yunzi still didn't leave. He stared at Li Yunxin carefully for a while and frowned. "The Lord Tongtian's momentum seems to have weakened. Did he suffer some sort of injury that caused his cultivation level to drop? Tomorrow is a big event. We can't make any mistakes." Li Yunxin closed his eyes and kept silent for a while. Then he said only 4 words, "The secret method of the dragons." A warm smile appeared on Yu Yunzi's face and she finally flew away. After another 3 breaths, Lu Laodao came out of the room and sat beside Li Yunxin. Li Yunxin sighed. "He's going to take action. I'm here to see what's going on tonight." Lu Laodao just said, in a low voice. Li Yunxin waved his hand as if he was driving away mosquitoes. "Let's finish everything tomorrow." Under the acacia tree in the courtyard, the roots of an acacia flower trembled slightly and fell off in an instant. It was a rare cloudy day on the 17th of June. The sky was livid with heavy clouds. There was no wind. It was like a big steamer since the morning. But the people in the city of Wei didn't feel annoyed, because the clouds meant that it might rain. Many people in the city didn't do farm work. But in this day and age there were no real city people. They all knew something about crops. Besides, today was the day when the headquarters of the dragon cult was completed. Everyone was happy. It was not that everyone was a believer. They just knew that the dragon cult was generous and had the support of the Yu's mansion. On normal days they would give some money to the dragon cult. Today was an auspicious day. Therefore, at the first light of day, some people came to Taoshi Road with their families to occupy a good place. The headquarters was not an altar but a temple. But this temple couldn't be described as a big temple. The foundation was deep and the platform was high. According to Li Yunxin's unique hobby, she has to climb 49 steps of white marble to get on the platform. If someone falls from the platform, he or she will fall to his or her death. The platform was big and the floor was paved with green flagstones. The whole courtyard of the former Dragon King Temple of Lu Laodao was now just a main hall on the platform. The main body of the temple was covered with yellow glazed tiles. It looked magnificent. On a good day, it would even reflect golden light under the sunlight. Many people swore that they saw the Dragon God Temple in the Great Yi and the ruined palace in the city of Wei before it was burned down. Although their great-grandfathers were not born when the Great Yi was destroyed. But it was true. Li Yunxin asked people to build the temple according to the emperor's palace in his world. But the scale was reduced and only a main hall was built. Fortunately, the Daqing state was still clean. He used some golden glazed tiles so no one made trouble for him. Those who came early came to wait under the platform of the Dragon God Temple. When the auspicious time came, the dragon cult's leader would worship Shinryu on the platform. Maybe a lot of gold and silver would be sprinkled. But some people thought they came early. Others didn't leave last night. The weather was cool. They slept on the ground with their clothes. When the sky brightened, they were too hot to sleep. They started to chat. They talked about all kinds of strange things about the dragon cult. For example, someone saw the dragon cult's leader shoot out a golden light from his palm and split a mountain. In fact, people didn't believe it. People who heard it didn't believe it either. It was just like those folklores where someone met an immortal or was called by the king of hell to be a judge. But the people in the city of Wei had experienced several strange things. Although they didn't believe it, they were in awe of it. The more people gathered, the more rumors about the dragon cult's leader. After the morning, when it was almost noon, the divine dragon temple was almost surrounded by a group of thousands of people. Thousands of people didn't stand in a tight line. They were randomly scattered on the ground. Even the half-demolished Taoshi Road that had yet to be rebuilt could not contain them. The crowd squeezed all the way to Willow Street outside Taoshi Road. There were so many people. Peddlers also came to sell food, toys and small things. Since he was waiting, he would eat something and look at the little things while waiting. The whole Taoshi Road became a hubbub of people. Some people in the city who didn't want to come also came to join in the fun after hearing that there was a market today. Some farmers who entered the city saw the crowd and asked around. Then they hurried home. Why did they go home? To prepare goods for the market. Commerce was not developed in this era. Many things that the farmers around the city of Wei needed were hard to get even in the shops in the city. There were no suitable places to sell the things that the farmers produced. Li Yunxin turned sour soup into a river on the Chongmen Street. That was the market. Once or twice a month, people around the city of Wei would go to the Chongmen Street to exchange goods. This was called going to the market. Right now, the Divine Dragon Cult's headquarters sacrificial ceremony has not yet begun, but unexpectedly a marketplace has been forcibly created. In the past, this was handled by the officials. But now the city of Wei was in a state of anarchy. The magistrate of the city didn't have time to care about this. He couldn't order the bailiffs. Thus, when it was time for noon, there were more than 10,000 people around. There were so many people, and the topic of their idle chatter was always related to Divine Dragon Cult, so gradually the topic was related to that cult leader. And gradually, some people said they had seen the cult master before. When did they see him? It was a few days before the Dragon King showed his divinity and burned the wild mountain. Coincidentally, there was a peddler selling sour soup in the market. Hearing this, he slapped his thigh and said with gritted teeth, "That's him." At first people thought he was joking, so they teased him. Then the peddler told them about how his sour soup was painted into the river by the young man. That incident was widely spread in the city of Wei, so they knew it was not fake. Coincidentally, some of the customers were there that day, which confirmed the peddler's words. The peddler also said that he also went to the dragon cult a few days ago. He heard that they were generous and wanted to see if he could get a windfall. However, he didn't get any advantage but met the dragon cult master face to face. Who else could it be but the young Daoist priest that day? At this point, it meant that the cult master of the dragon cult had been in the city of Wei before and made strange things. He was indeed a sublime person or even a divine dragon. However, as the customers came and went, this topic was mentioned again and again. Hey, the peddler selling sour soup was punished by the dragon cult master. Finally, a person who lived in Egret Island and came to the city of Wei for business heard about it. This person thought for a while and finally realized that he seemed to have seen the young man in Egret town. Of course, he had seen Li Yunxin. Almost everyone in Egret Island was a dragon cult follower. However, as the cult master Li Yunxin, it was hard to associate him with the passerby he met in Egret town. Until today, after hearing so much, he remembered the rare handsome appearance of the dragon cult master. Originally, this person planned to rush back to Egret Island. But before leaving the city, he passed by Taoshi Road. Being a lively person, he came to have a look and eat something before continuing his journey. At this time, he almost finished his food, so he didn't say much. Anyway, it was not strange that he had seen the cult master of the dragon cult in Egret Island. Everyone knew that the dragon cult started in Egret Island. However, just as he finished the soup in one gulp, put a coin on the table and was about to get up and leave, the peddler who was busy behind the cart suddenly spoke to him. This peddler was originally talking too. He was just greeting people with a face full of smiles and occasionally chatting with them. But just now, a gust of cold wind blew past, and the peddler's figure suddenly stiffened. Then he stopped what he was doing and ignored the newcomers calling him, only staring straight at the passerby from Egret Island, saying, "Tell me more." As he spoke, he slowly and inexpertly scooped another bowl of sour soup from the pot, and personally brought it over to the peddler. Then he also sat at the table and said, "I like to hear about him. Tell me more. When was the first time you saw him? What did he look like?" The passerby from Egret Island naturally felt that it was strange. But in any case, he was just a peddler, an ordinary person. Moreover, everyone was talking about the dragon cult master, so there was nothing to hide. Because of the bowl of steaming sour soup, he sat back down at the table and smiled. "Hey, about this matter, actually I'm not that hungry. It's for you," the peddler said with a smile. "You know that person you also heard from others just now, he's had dealings with me. That's why I really want to know more about him. I feel that it's very interesting." The peddler's smile was like a mask hanging on his face. Even the passerby felt that it was a bit strange, but couldn't tell what was strange about it. A few other passerby called out to him a few times, but seeing that he didn't respond, they cursed and left. But the peddler didn't care and only reached out to pat the passerby's hand. "Tell me." The Egret Island passerby suddenly felt at ease and couldn't help but want to talk. Chapter 183. He picked up the chopsticks and took a sip of the oily soup. He exhaled with satisfaction and said, "First time?" The first time was on the day after the wildfire broke out in the wild mountain. I remember clearly, it was said that there was a wildfire in the mountain that day. Many birds and beasts must have been burned to death. I went to pick them up. They were all good meat. I also thought it was a good thing. I got up early in the morning and rushed to the wild mountain. But when I went out, I lived near the water. I saw a young man in white standing on the bank of the estuary of Wei River and looking into the water. I saw him wearing the clothes of a rich family and heard about what happened in the city of Wei. I thought maybe his family was also in the city and wanted to jump into the river because they were in trouble. So I went to persuade him. But the young man turned around and left before I could persuade him. When I saw his face, hey, I couldn't forget it. That handsomeness, that's the face of a young man, not the face of us working people. Now thinking about it, I can't forget it. How many times can I see such a handsome man in my life? Alas, later. Your Excellency, are you sure? The peddler asked him calmly. It was the first time for the passerby to be called Your Excellency by a peddler selling sour soup. He was stunned. But this feeling of surprise was fleeting. He soon sighed with a bitter smile. I can't be wrong. Why can't I be wrong? That day we rushed to the wild mountain for a whole day, but what happened? That mountain fire, oh my god. I'll be able to roast you from a distance of 40 to 50 feet. Burnt birds and carnivorous beasts? Bullshit. They were all burnt into charcoal. How can I remember it wrongly? One person can't catch up with it in his whole life. The peddler suddenly fell on the table. He knocked his forehead on the table with a loud thud. The passerby was startled. But after a breath, the peddler shook his head and opened his eyes. First he looked around blankly and then felt a splitting headache. He didn't know what had just happened and why he was sitting opposite the guest. The passerby in egret was a little confused. He didn't know what was going on. The peddler was also confused. He felt empty, as if he had been hollowed out. The two of them stared at each other for a while, not quite understanding what had just happened. But someone already understood. The ghost passed through the crowd and went straight to the station of the Xianxia Danding sect. At the corner of an alley on Willow Street, a ferocious-looking general on horseback stared at the ghost for a while, then turned his horse and disappeared into the air silently. A quarter of an hour later, a passerby who happened to pass the station of the Xianxia Danding sect stopped and shivered slightly. Then he turned around, pushed open the black lacquered door of the residence, and walked straight into the main hall. On normal days, the two garrisons in the city of Wei were more majestic and mysterious than the yamen of the prefectural magistrate. At this time, even if the people were gone, their prestige still remained. There was no need to lock them. The passerby walked all the way to the main hall and saw Yu Yunzi sitting in the middle of the hall. Enlightened being Dao attainment raised his head slightly and took a glance before closing his eyes and meditating again. In half an hour, it will be the auspicious hour. Yunzi said calmly, today I will kill that dragon son. You don't need to give me any more advice. The possessed passerby was a young servant wearing a green hat. He had a hairy beard and a few freckles on his face. He looked like a half-grown child. But now, with a solemn and serious voice, the child said to an enlightened Daoist master, you are mistaken. That's not Long's son, it's Li Yunxin. Yunzi did not open his eyes. He disguised himself as Li Yunxin and called himself Li Yunxin. I know all that. I am thinking of something. Don't bother me if you have nothing to say. Take care of this and we may work together in the future, but don't let I hate you. The servant looked at Yunzi and said seriously, it's not like that, Li Yunxin. It's the only son of Li Chunfeng and his wife, the real Li Yunxin. He's not Long's son, he's just Li Yunxin. The night Long Jiuzi died, he didn't die. Yunzi opened his eyes. Then he frowned slightly. The servant took a step forward. In order to prevent you from making any mistakes today, I have inquired about a lot of news in the city these days. And today I got the last bit of evidence. The night Long Jiuzi fought with the cultivator Ling Kongzi of your sect was April 19th. Emperor Li passed away on the 19th of April. 6 hours later, on April 20th, Emperor Li achieved the Ghost Emperor's body. April 22nd, 5 cultivators of Daotong pursued the Ghost Emperor but failed. They fought for 3 days and 3 nights. April 28th, the seriously injured Ghost Emperor broke into the Tongtian Sea and fought with Long Jiuzi hatred. On the 29th of April, Yazi disappeared. Daoist Yunzi, more than one person said that after April 20th, then Li Yunxin appeared in the Egret Island. You said that Li Yunxin is the incarnation of hatred. On April 20th, hatred was still in the Tongtian Sea. If he came to the Wei River and turned into Li Yunxin, how could he fight with the Ghost Emperor? After saying that, the manservant didn't say anything else and only looked at Yu Yunzi. The truth state Daoist's expression was frozen on his face, and he didn't try to hide it. This went on for a long time. It meant that he was so focused on something else that he didn't even care about his own expression. After a quarter of an hour, Yunzi let out a long sigh with a solemn expression. He stood up and paced a few steps. As he walked, he looked at the servant who was possessed by Lin Liangzi, frowned and said hesitantly, how could I know that you didn't set me up? You know that's not a reasonable deduction, the servant said calmly. The manservant said calmly, our common interest is greater than our common interest with Li Yunxin. But you're looking for the jade chip of enlightenment. We're looking for the jade chip of enlightenment, the servant said in a low voice. And as far as I know, the jade chip of enlightenment is no longer with Li Yunxin. Dragon Sun took it away with Chi Kiss. After Dragon Sun died, his palace disappeared, so it can be concluded that it was taken away by Lord Dongting. If you can find the jade chip of enlightenment from Lord Dongting, you're a better partner than Li Yunxin. And he's just a kid. A kid? But he also deceived me. Yunzi sighed and accepted Lin Liangzi's statement. He looked up at the sky. The auspicious time is coming. Lin Liangzi frowned. What are you going to do? Yunzi shook his head but smiled slightly. What to do? Do you know what a good plan is? Without waiting for Lin Liangzi to answer, he walked out of the door and said loudly, there are always loopholes in a bad plan. It can only be used to deal with blind and stupid people. A good plan is delicate and meticulous, and it's more than enough to deal with stupid people. However, if it's used to deal with smart people, once a step is not calculated well and a mistake is made, the whole plan will be out of control. And a good plan is to leave room everywhere and deal with changes by not changing. No matter what he does, I'll stand firm. What I have is a good plan. So what should I do? Just act according to the plan. Yunzi stepped out of the door, the corner of his robe flashed by the door and his voice came through the door. My honorable guest, please wait here. After I take the head of that kid Li Yunxin, I'll come back to discuss the plan with you. Where did you find this group of people? Li Yunxin frowned, looking at a group of people who were preparing on the white jade platform on the 49th step of the Dragon King Temple. There were performers of gongs, drums, swona, eru and flute. There were men and women who looked like demons and ghosts, wearing red and green clothes. There were a lot of unknown brands of fans and ceremonial guards, and there were also some people who were wearing formal clothes but not formal clothes. Right now he was busying himself with a solemn expression. Well, it's the old system, Lu Laodao explained, children, Dragon King ceremonial guards and so on. Brother X, and look at the ceremonial officer in red, that's General Crab. Okay. Li Yunxin sighed. That means I have to talk to them later. Yes. These ceremonial officers are imitating the two groups of ministers in front of Lord Dragon King. Brother Xian is on the seat of honor. Where's the dragon throne? I'll go and urge. Li Yunxin was no longer listening when he said these words. He was looking elsewhere. They were standing on the platform under the red corridor of the main hall of the Dragon King Temple. The people below the platform couldn't see them, but they could see the sea of tens of thousands of people. It was a magnificent sight. Li Yunxin turned her head to look behind her. Then he waved his hand. There's no need. I don't think it'll last long. Lu Laodao was stunned, followed his gaze and saw Yunzi walking toward them. Anyone with a discerning eye could see the expression of the Daoist priest. Curiosity, mockery and doubt. Go away. Okay. Lu Laodao didn't hesitate, turned around and walked away quickly. Yunzi didn't care about the Daoist priest's departure, his eyes were fixed on Li Yunxin in white. He stopped 3 steps in front of him and said, You're not hatred. Li Yunxin was slightly taken aback and then she smiled. Please recall. I never said I was. You're Li Yunxin. He smiled again. You remember, I never said I wasn't. Good. Yunzi squinted his eyes. I was fooled by you. Heroes come from the young. Yunzi snorted. Your sharp tongue, did you learn it from your late father Li Chunfeng? Li Yunxin was silent for a while, then stopped smiling. Talk is talk, don't ask about other people's parents. Why, are you going to complain to my parents? Yunzi also smiled coldly. Humph. Also, you used to be in society and I heard you were an official, right? Li Yunxin interrupted him. Then do you understand the principle that one's wife and children shouldn't be harmed? Immortals have many ways to extort confessions from mortals, but they don't have to cut people open. Let's interview. What's your mentality? Yunzi was silent for a while, thinking that it was unwise and degrading to quarrel with a teenager, not a teenager incarnated by the Lord Tongtian. So he changed the topic and said in a low voice, What about the Lord Tongtian? Are these your tricks or the Lord Tongtian's? I have no comment. Yunzi looked at Li Yunxin's demeanor and expression and suddenly laughed. Good. He raised his hand and twirled his beard. I saw through your identity, but you didn't panic and still didn't fall into a disadvantageous position. Exactly the same as when I was a teenager. I know you're acting like this because you're afraid. But you really don't have to be afraid. What I said before still stands. Since you're a human and not a demon, it's easier to talk about this. Dao Tong wants the translucent jade slip, but I don't. On the contrary, I need a smart helper. However, whether you follow the Lord Tong Tian or me, I won't make things difficult for you, as long as you don't go against me. As for the Lord Tong Tian, is actually a dragon lady? That's interesting. Yunzi shook his head gently, but she can pretend to be your servant and play along with you, so she's not a rude and stupid demon. Things can still be done. You're really a smart person. Li Yunxin smiled and turned to look in the direction of the front of the hall. A good show is about to start, we have time to talk about it in detail. Look, the auspicious time has come. As soon as he finished speaking, the gong sounded. The big gong was erected on a thick wooden frame at the end of the steps, and it was taller than a person. It was very much like the big drum that Li Yunxin had seen before, but he didn't know why it was changed to a gong in this world. The ceremonial officer in red silk knocked 21 times with all his strength, and the sound was earth-shattering, making people's ears numb. But such a sound only made those people in front of the temple turn their heads slightly and stop what they were doing. More people were still doing what they were doing. Originally they were here to watch the fun, but now it had become a market. What could be more lively than a market? Yunzi, who was walking slowly beside Li Yunxin, smiled and said, "This is not a good sign. After all, you are still a young man. It will be much better for the Lord Tongtian to come forward." Li Yunxin paused by the side of the big gong and reached out to press down on the still buzzing gong. Then he turned to look at Yunzi. "You are just afraid that we are playing tricks and you want to see Dragon Lady. She didn't go anywhere else, she is just staying in the temple. If you want to see her, I will ask her to come out." "I want to see her," Yunzi said. "Sanhua, come out." Li Yunxin did not hesitate to shout into the hall. At this time, the group of people on the stage, which Li Yunxin scolded as a grassroots troupe, were unhurriedly getting into position and getting into formation. In this era, there were no professional ceremonial companies, and a lot of this kind of work was done by the troupe. They had seen many big scenes, so they did not have stage fright. They lined up in an orderly manner, and the actors in the civil and military official costumes stood lazily, and the vocal troupe also sat on the side. As soon as the master gave the order, the music started, and they immediately cheered up and threw themselves into their roles. In Li Yunxin's eyes, it was like a child's play, but the people in the city of Wei liked it very much. No one wanted to listen to tedious speeches and preferred to watch the troupe's performance. It was said that there were famous actors in the city of Wei on the stage. Chapter 184. Just then the door of the main hall of the Dragon God Temple was opened. A gap was opened and a strong fire shot out. Even in such a hazy day, the fire was still bright, like a long sword stabbing out of the temple door. The back door opened again and a fiery red long sword turned into a fiery red fan. The figure inside was completely revealed to everyone. The people in the troupe didn't really believe in the dragon cult. They traveled all over the country and had seen a lot of the world, unlike the ordinary people who were confined to one city or one place. However, even these actors stopped what they were doing when they saw the scene in front of them. They were stunned. A woman wearing a strange armor walked out of the main hall. Flames surrounded her feet, but they didn't burn the wooden door frame. It was as if the flames were completely under her command. She had dark skin and a pair of red eyes with long, thin pupils in the middle. No matter how they looked at it, it didn't look like a show. The dragon lady took 5 steps out of the temple door, and the flames around her suddenly rose and turned into a fire pillar several meters high. The astonishing and oppressive heat was finally released completely, causing the air to distort. A gust of wind rose from where he stood, spreading in all directions to the west. The sleeves of the actors, who were frozen in shock, flapped loudly in the wind. Even their gaping mouths were filled with the wind. Someone whispered, "This is the dragon god." The actors on the stage immediately fell to their knees. But they didn't seem to be in awe, but fear. Then the people who weren't attracted by the 21 loud gongs finally saw the strange phenomenon on the stage. With the Dragon God Temple as the center, the silence quickly spread and spread like the wind. The noise quickly disappeared. The silence lasted for a few breaths and then it slowly turned into a low buzz. People were whispering to each other. At this time, the believers of the dragon cult finally played their role. When they excitedly, nervously, and proudly told the people around them that this was the divine dragon crown prince respected by the divine dragon sect, they who were not very sure themselves had successfully played the role of a bewitcher. The rumor quickly spread through the crowd. Soon, people began to kneel on the ground as if they were worshipping a statue in a temple, and more people followed suit. Finally, the tens of thousands of people were like harvested wheat, all of them stooped down, and the deafening clamor resounded once again. But this time it was no longer the children who bargained and cursed at their own children. Instead they were praising and praising, expressing their wishes in fear and trepidation. Xianxia narrowed her eyes and looked down the stage. Look, this is the power of faith. Humans are the easiest to fool. Xianxia didn't seem to care about it. He looked at the performers on the stage and then at the people who were kneeling below the stage and looking up at the dragon lady on the stage from time to time. He said with slight mockery, "They can't see the real divine sense, but they like these superficial tricks. But you use this method to do this, it's really... I just like this kind of pompous, boorish and vulgar tone." Xianxia spread her hands. "I feel uncomfortable if no one praises me for a day." Yunzi smiled, ignored him and walked past him. A few days ago he saw Xianxia as a great enemy, but now he knew that he wasn't Dragon Son, and he thought that the Dragon Lady was hatred. So he shifted his gaze from Xianxia to the Dragon Lady. He walked past the actors who were kneeling on the ground and scolded them in a low voice for them to leave. The actors didn't know who this middle-aged man was, but seeing him talking to the dragon cult master, they thought that he was also a person of high status. Hence, they immediately dispersed like a swarm of bees, distancing themselves from the monster that did not look friendly at all and had scales on its body. The people below the stage saw him as a god, but the people on the stage saw him as a monster. Most of the time, the only difference between fear and reverence was the distance between the two. The platform in front of the main hall was quite spacious, almost like a small square. Yunzi stared at the dragon lady as he walked slowly and said, "Lord Tonglun." However, the dragon lady didn't pay attention to him. She just squinted at him and took 2 steps forward. The flames around her rose higher, stirring up the wind in the air. The people below the stage let out a series of exclamations. They felt that it was more interesting than magic tricks, but it was also spectacular and mysterious. They had not seen anything like that in their lives. It was worth it for them to squeeze under the stage on such a hot and humid day and smell the stench of other people's sweat. Yunzi didn't care. He stopped a dozen steps away from the dragon lady. "Lord Tonglun wants the power of vow? Then you don't have to do this. I have a better way to make the people worship you. But I don't know if Lord Tongtian knows what I said to the child." Lord Tongtian should know. Yunzi was talking to the dragon lady, repeating the promise he made to Xianxia a few days ago. Just as he was about to change his tone, he saw Xianxia with her hands behind her back, slowly walked up to them and listened with interest. After listening for a while he said, "Let me interrupt. Now it's time to get down to business." Yunzi frowned slightly. "I haven't finished." The dragon lady, whom he regarded as Lord Tongtian, finally paid attention to him, but not in the tone and not in the way he imagined. Instead she suddenly screamed, "Go away. Stinky Daoist. Don't stop me from showing my divinity." This was far from the Lord Tongtian in Yunzi's imagination. He thought that although he had seen through the plan, it was still a wonderful plan, and it could not be completely made by Xianxia. He mistook Xianxia for Lord Tongtian and had several dealings with him. Although now he knew he was wrong, it also showed that the young man was not an ordinary person. It was normal for such a person to get together with Lord Tongtian and come up with such a plan. He thought that the young man was frivolous and rash, so there must be an experienced and prudent Lord Tonglun. However, the tone, words, and behavior of the dragon lady were not what Dragon Son should be like. Yunzi was stunned for a moment. It was at this moment that a talisman in his sleeve suddenly jumped up and down in a frenzy, emitting a sharp cry that only he could hear. Taoist priest Didao's expression changed, and he immediately threw away the doubts in his mind. It was a purple talisman. This kind of talisman was time-consuming and laborious to make, so he brought 2 with him. One had been used and now there was only one left. This meant that someone else within 1,000 miles had used a purple talisman, But this was not in his plan. Thus Yunzi smiled without batting an eyelid, snorted, turned around and walked straight to the back of the hall. Li Yunxin didn't care about him, walked straight to the front of the stairs and looked down at the people below the stage. He was silent for a while and suddenly raised his voice. You all know about my dragon cult. You also know what my dragon cult has been doing in City of Wei recently. Then you should also know that my cult worships dragon son Qi. When he spoke he used spiritual power, so his voice was loud but not harsh. There were thousands of people on Taoshi Road and tens of thousands of people outside, all heard his voice clearly. Some people outside couldn't hear clearly, so they asked the people in front, and gradually understood what he was talking about. Just this one thing. A person speaking on the stage and tens of thousands of people could hear clearly. This kind of thing was also a god's ability that made people sincerely believe in it. On the stage, Li Yunxin said again. However, some people misunderstood, saying that our cult's Qi dragon son is the prince of the vast sea dragon palace. Before this we didn't clarify this matter. Now on the day of the completion of the dragon god temple, we will tell the world who our cult worships, in case some devout believers go astray in the future. Li Yunxin's voice came from afar, into Yunzi's ears. At this moment he stood under the red corridor of the main hall of the Dragon King Temple, and took out a purple talisman from his sleeve. The mysterious patterns on the talisman had become flickering, as if a lot of light was sealed in it. The body of the talisman was boiling hot, and if an ordinary person in the secular world held it, his skin would be torn and his flesh would be torn. While listening to Li Yunxin's nonsense to deceive people, Yunzi frowned and said in a low voice, "Order." The seal was removed. The patterns on the talisman instantly became blurred, and the light contained in it was released in an instant. A misty green figure quickly formed in front of him. Seeing this person, Yunzi was a little stunned at first, and then he immediately bowed and said, "Greetings, great master." This blurred figure was the same height as Yunzi. He was wearing a purple gold crown with 8 treasures on his head, and a cloud-embroidered robe. His face was blurred, but his voice was very clear. He couldn't see where the scene behind him was, but Yunzi knew that it wasn't anywhere in the Langya cave. The figure formed by the purple talisman was the great master of the Langya cave in Daotong, a practitioner of the mysterious state Kun Wuxi. But the great master of the Langya cave, the most powerful person in the sect, why would he come to this place thousands of miles away from the city of Wei? Soon Yunzi's doubts were answered. The illusory figure of Kun Wuxi opened his mouth and said, "We have found the whereabouts of Long Ertzi Hatred. 5 days ago we fought with him and now he should have entered the kingdom of Qing. This time I came alone, but Long Ertzi Hatred's cultivation has been recultivated to the perfect harmony state, and he is only 1 step away from returning to the mysterious state. This time, we of Daotong have decided to get rid of this great demon, so we have to leave quickly and keep a low profile so as not to alarm more great demons. Right now in the kingdom of Qing, there are only 2 practitioners above the realm of true state. I will go north, you go south, and we will intercept Hatred together. We must not let him escape and cause more trouble." Yunzi's expression froze on his face and his heart quickly welled up. A feeling that even he didn't know how to describe. He had to clench his teeth so hard that they almost broke to pieces before he could forcefully suppress that extremely complicated feeling. He bowed to the sect master again and asked in a cautious tone, "Sect master, are you sure that it is Long Ertzi Hatred? I have never seen Long Sun's true body, so what does Long Ertzi Hatred look like?" "He did not show his true body, only his fiend god Dharma body," Sect Master Kun Wuxi answered him. "Remember well. Long Ertzi Hatred's fiend god Dharma body is a tall and sturdy man covered in golden fur, with a pair of jet-black coral antlers on his head. Blue eyes, thin pupils. When he transforms into a human, his body is slender, and he wears a yellow robe with a golden crown on his head. Remember his appearance, and when you see him you must first fight with him. You must not underestimate him." Hearing this, Yunzi frowned and he even forgot to speak. However, Kun Wuxi thought that he wasn't convinced and tried to persuade him again. "Cultivators like us rarely fight with dragons. Thus we only know that the bodies of demons are strong. However, when I fought with him I found out that the bodies of dragons are the demons of demons. If you meet Hatred you must not underestimate him. Just hold him back and wait for me." At this moment Yunzi heard Li Yunxin speaking on the stage in front of the hall. All of you have worshipped him before. He is the Wei River Dragon King, the Dragon Son Qi. He is the true god that our dragon cult worships. Previously all of you know that there was a battle in Weiqing City, and this Taoshi Road was destroyed during that battle. The wilderness mountain outside of the city was also burnt to a crisp during the battle. All of you didn't understand the matters of the Celestials in the past, but today I will tell all of you. That night there was a demon that invaded Weiqing City. Thus, the Wei River Dragon King who was protecting this place, appeared and killed the demon. After that he fought with the demon for 300 rounds on the wilderness mountain before he was killed. The flames that covered the mountain were the 3-flower dragon lady that served the Wei River Dragon King. 3-flower, come forward and show them the powers you used to kill the demon. That Wei River Dragon King was heavily injured during the battle with the demon, which was why there was a drought for the past month, and not a single drop of rain fell. Now that he has recovered some of his strength, he passed down the dragon cult. This is to let the people in the city do good deeds, pave the roads and make up for the poor people who had difficulty making a living because of the fire. Today you've met the tri-flowered dragon lady. But if you are sincere to the dragon cult and appreciate the great kindness of the Wei River Dragon King in protecting this city, then pray devoutly and recite the name of the cult master of the dragon cult, Wei River Dragon King. Maybe if you are sincere, there will be a heavy rain today to benefit millions of people. After saying this, the people under the stage started to discuss again, causing a wave of noise. The great master of the cave who was thousands of miles away seemed to have heard Yunzi's voice. At this time he realized that the place where Yunzi was at was not ordinary. So he asked, "What are you doing over there? Are you in trouble and can't get away?" Yunzi didn't answer immediately. Instead he let out a sigh of relief. At first he thought that Li Yunxin was the second son of the dragon hatred, but he was not. Then he thought that the Yin god that could create flames and grow 2 horns was the dragon lady hatred. However, now he knew that was not the case. That meant, an ignorant kid, an emptiness realm demonic Yin god that came from nowhere. These days the Yin god played around with him, but he didn't kill him. Now he was standing on the stage pretending to be the Wei River Dragon King right in front of him. He had lived for more than 100 years and he had never been humiliated like this. He had to pay the price. Yunzi smiled and said in a deep voice, "They are just a few clowns, fishing in troubled waters and causing trouble to people's hearts. Thanks to the words of the great master just now, I have a clear idea. I am going to kill all those evildoers and then I will conspire with the great master to kill the hatred." Chapter 185. At this moment the purple amulet burned out. A piece of talisman paper which was worth as much as all the businesses in the city of Wei, turned into ashes. Yunzi stared at the ashes for a quarter of an hour. Then Li Yunxin finally got to the point. "If you are not sincere it won't work. If you are sincere it will work. There are tens of thousands of people here today. But the ones who benefit the most from the rain are the farmers, not the people in the cities and towns like you. If those people are not here, how can the Dragon King send the rain?" Sanhua snorted sarcastically. That's right." As Sanzu, Li Yunxin hurriedly interrupted her. "Before noon today. If the farmers outside the city of Wei come to the city and sincerely worship the Wei River Dragon King, then there will be a heavy rain before sunset today. And it will bless the land along the Wei River with good weather." Speaking of this, the people under the stage finally came to their senses. Those who were originally in the front row were the bold ones who got up early and wanted to take advantage of the situation. Now hearing Li Yunxin's words, someone finally couldn't help but raise his head and shout to the stage, After saying this, are you going to pray for rain?" As soon as he said this, the surrounding group of people came to a sudden understanding and became excited. There were Dragon King temples everywhere and sometimes people would pray for rain. However, praying for rain was very different from worshipping the Dragon King spontaneously. It needed to be sacrificed. Not fruits or 3 animals but human sacrifice. Human sacrifice had been strictly forbidden by the imperial court, but it was still practiced everywhere. Because most of the time it was really effective. Cultivators and Yin gods all knew why. Yin gods who occupied a place would not often show their divinity. The reason was mentioned by Li Yunxin and Lu Laodao. If you often showed your divinity and answered every request, if you didn't do it well, people would be angry. This was called, the heart is not satisfied. Only when you occasionally gave those ignorant people some benefits would they carefully worship you. However, most Yin gods preferred human flesh and blood. Man was the spirit of all living things. Even the Yin spirits had to transform into human form in order to improve themselves. Therefore, they had an innate obsession with things like human flesh and blood. However, they were afraid of being eaten by others. Some of them were brave enough to eat in secret, while some of them were cowardly enough to endure it. Only the great demons of the true state and above were not afraid. However, the people of Daotong didn't care much about sacrificial ceremonies. Some cultivators who roamed the world would interfere, but Daotong and the imperial court did not oppose it. Because this was a tradition. Such a thing had existed since the beginning of humanity, and it was deeply rooted in people's hearts. Sometimes forcing it would make the ignorant people unhappy. The government did not advocate or oppose it. There were even some officials who believed in this and would bring out prisoners who had already been sentenced to death by the imperial court to be sacrificed when the local area was really dry. For a death row inmate, this was a benefit. A life that was supposed to be lost was taken just like that, and his family would be compensated. The city of Wei was an enlightened place. It had been 100 years since the last time they held a sacrificial ceremony. As soon as this question was asked, everyone became excited. The dead praying for rain sounded terrible, but everyone believed that it would not happen to them. They all thought that the city of Wei was a rich and prosperous place. At least in broad daylight they would not drag people onto the stage and kill them. They must have taken people from the prison of the government. Since it was a death row inmate, he deserved to die. But this was not in Li Yunxin's plan. He was not afraid of killing people, but he did not like to kill people for no reason. It would dirty his clothes and offend some people. He smiled slightly. The rain is required. But the human sacrifice is also required. Another voice interrupted him. His voice was equally loud and clear, reaching everyone's ears. The tone was soft and warm, which made people feel comfortable. Yunzi walked over with a mysterious smile on his face. Every step he took covered a distance of dozens of feet. Soon he came to Li Yunxin's side. The supernatural power of shrinking the ground into inches was exactly what people wanted. The audience exclaimed, saying that another immortal was coming. Li Yunxin did not say anything. Yunzi looked at him carefully and then at Dragon Lady. Then he turned to the audience and said, "The human sacrifice is necessary. But not now. I am the president of the Institute of Law of the Langya Cave of Daotong, enlightened immortal Yunzi." He said this and soon realized that he made a mistake. Immortal was already the most extraordinary existence in these people's hearts. They also thought that an emptiness state cultivator was an immortal. As for the Cave Institute of Law enlightened immortal, what the hell were they? People knew about the cave just like people knew about the heavenly court. But they did not know that the head of some department in the heavenly court was some little immortal. So they looked at each other and asked, "What is the Institute of Law? Enlightened immortal is not as powerful as immortals," and so on. Then they looked at him blankly. Yunzi sighed, "I am the real immortal of the cave." His wish was finally fulfilled, and he could hear the people gasping and exclaiming in unison. "I came here to bless the land and kill the demons." He emphasized the last 4 words and glanced at Li Yunxin. Then he said, "Praying for rain to bless the people is a good thing. Now that the dragon cult wants to pray for rain, I wish him a hand. I wrote a prayer to the heaven and earth to pray for a heavy rain." But in the city of Wei, there was a demon who stirred up trouble and angered the people. Yunzi softened his tone and said in a low voice, "So there was a drought for more than a month. To ask for rain, ordinary sacrifices are not enough. It must be a demon who is full of evil and has mana as a sacrifice. Only then can you ask for happiness. But now," he turned to look at Li Yunxin, "let the cult master of the dragon cult show his supernatural power first. After showing his supernatural power, I will then offer a sacrifice to the Dragon King for you." His words were easy to understand and the people under the stage all understood. So they realized that not only did someone cast spells to make rain, there were also people who cast spells to catch and kill demons. This matter was going to be really interesting. Suddenly the crowd was boiling with joy. They whispered to each other that today's trip was not in vain. Finally, there would be a good show to watch. They wished they could call their mothers, daughters-in-law and sons to watch together. Then it returned to the bustling market from before. Yunzi looked down at the crowd from the high stage. He turned around and his robe sleeves fluttered. He was really like an immortal. He walked slowly to the front of Li Yunxin and looked at him calmly. "You are smarter than I thought." Li Yunxin raised her eyebrows and lightly patted the folding fan on her palm. "What kind of amazing thing have you learned?" she asked. "Not much. But..." Yu Yunzi suddenly let out a self-deprecating laugh. "Previously I thought you were the Lord Tongtian, so I talked a lot with you. Later I thought you and the Lord Tongtian worked together to set up this trap. Although I was a little disappointed looking at your age, I thought you were a genius." He snorted. "It's just that now I know that you, kid, are just another sharp-tongued, gutsy fugitive. But you are a fugitive who cultivates the path of painting." Li Yunxin's action of tapping her palm with the folding fan paused slightly. But he quickly hid it with a smile. All this was seen by Yunzi. He walked closer to Li Yunxin and put his hand on his shoulder. To the people under the stage, it looked like Sendo was talking to the dragon cult master, and it was just an intimate action. But in fact, Yunzi only touched Li Yunxin's shoulder and then withdrew his hand. He walked to his side and stood beside him. Yunzi looked at the people under the stage side by side with him and said in a moderate tone, "Dao Tong shepherds the world, so he has to take care of many things. For example, the city of Wei is a big city, and its influence is not limited to one prefecture or one state. In the city of Wei something happened. A whole street was destroyed. The demon cultivator showed his divinity in public and so many people died. Dao Tong is responsible." He slightly tilted his head to look at Li Yunxin. "There must be an explanation. Otherwise, why do you think the imperial court didn't send an official here 2 months after the accident, and no one else investigated this matter? Because this kind of thing should be handled by Dao Tong. I'm here to handle this matter." The Jade Script of Illumination. Ling Kongzi. One is an object and the other is a person. They're just points. And the influence of the matter is the surface. Do you think I'm here for the Jade Script of Illumination? For Ling Kongzi? No. I'm just here for the matter itself. Since I'm here, I need an explanation. Do you think it's interesting to pretend to be Lord Tongtian and lure me into a trap, huh? Yunzi chuckled softly. "When I was your age, I also liked to walk between cliffs and ferocious beasts. I was a famous knight-errant at that time. I liked that feeling. Life and death were on the line, but it was in my control. But I did that. I walked between cliffs and cliffs with iron chains around my waist. I walked among ferocious beasts whose teeth had been plucked out. I was sure they couldn't hurt me. But you," Yunzi looked at Li Yunxin with eyes like 2 arrows, "you deceived a Daoist immortal with some tricks that you thought were exquisite. Don't you know you are seeking death? I thought you were Hatred, the son of Long Erzi. When Lord Tongtian said so many things to you, did you think it was true?" Yunzi looked at him. With a sneer, he turned his head again. "I'm the president of the Law Academy of Langya Cave of Dao Tong. Even if I want to plot and get something, how can I collude with demons? Want that hatred to sleep beside my bed? What a joke. Not only can I obtain power, I can also obtain a mystical merit of killing the dragon son. Why wouldn't I want it? But you are not Hatred. The female monster beside you is also not Yazi. Although I don't know what method you used to get the dragon chi, you seem to have not realized one thing. You've already sent yourself to the position that I've left for the dragon son Yazi in my plan. The real Hatred may be able to fight like a cornered beast. But you..." Yunzi looked at him with slight mockery. "Do you still think it is interesting to walk between cliffs and ferocious beasts? You think you are smart, but you have provoked someone you shouldn't have. Now I really want to see how you can summon a heavy rain. Well, some Een spirits with supernatural powers can sprinkle some rain from the sky. I have seen this kind of thing. Those so-called Dragon King worshipped in remote places in the mountains and streams are mostly like this. But now listen carefully." Yunzi turned sideways and said to Li Yunxin seriously, "I promised them a heavy rain, so I need a heavy rain. I also told them to kill demons to sacrifice to Dragon King. If you can't get the rain, then you are the demon. I won't kill you immediately. I will let you suffer all the pain in this world so that you can ask yourself, how dare you lie to a perfected person? Li Yunxin's expression changed as if he was trying hard to suppress his feelings. After a long while he finally heaved a sigh of relief and took a step back from Yu Yunzi. He blinked and said, "Why are you so angry?" Yunzi only looked at him without sadness or joy on his face. Li Yunxin sighed. "Well, I admit that I shouldn't have lied to you before. This is very hurtful. Just now in the red corridor I shouldn't have quarreled with you, okay?" After saying this he looked at Yunzi's expression again. Yunzi still didn't move, nor did he speak, only staring at him. But the people below the stage saw that the two immortals on the stage didn't move and only talked for a long time, so they became a little impatient. At this time it was already noon. The sky was gloomy and hot, and now with so many people gathered together, it was even more stuffy. They really wanted to immediately have a rain. Even if it was a drizzle it would still cool people down. Therefore the people below the stage slowly began to discuss. One person definitely wouldn't dare to ask two Sendo to do something. But a group of people or 10,000 people was different. The collective consciousness wrapped around them and finally, the desire in their hearts converged into a unified voice. They began to ask the leader of the dragon cult to quickly send down the rain to relieve the heat of the summer. Both Li Yunxin and Yunzi heard this voice. Li Yunxin sighed heavily again. "How about this? Since everyone's request is so strong, then, if I can really ask for a heavy rain, let's not be so stiff and talk about it, okay?" A meaningful smile appeared on Yu Yunzi's face. "You're not the son of a dragon and neither is that demon. How can you ask for a heavy rain? I have my own way." Li Yunxin spread out his hands. "So it's settled?" Yunzi smiled even more happily. "Then it's settled." Li Yunxin immediately turned around and directly raised his voice. "Then I will give you a rain." After he said that he reached into his sleeve and took out a magic brush. Then his robe sleeves surged as if suddenly filled with strong wind. The magic brush in his hand seemed to become extremely heavy at this moment, and it took all his strength to move it in the void. It was as if this brush was affecting the fate and spiritual chi of the whole city of Wei and even the entire Wei River in. "So, you want to use the whole painting array outside the city plus the power of faith of these people and those people outside the city, to draw a rain from somewhere else." Yu Yunzi suddenly spoke from behind him. His voice was cold as if it was cut by a knife. "Building bridges, paving roads, building righteous canals. These are used to deceive people and today it comes in handy. It's a good plan. But why do you think I asked you to kill the 36 cultivators? Do you really think it's just to give me an excuse to get the power of Dao Tong?" Chapter 186. It was common sense that one should not easily withdraw one's spiritual power when performing a spell. That was because the unformed painting array or book array was like a pool that contained turbulent spiritual power. Now an opening was made in the pool, and a thin magic brush was used to stir a certain key point. The original balance was disrupted and a new balance was formed. Finally, the spiritual power flowed into a system, and became a circular array. This was the finishing touch. The finishing touch of an ordinary painting really only needed one stroke. But now Li Yunxin was controlling the big array using the city of Wei and the land outside the city of Wei as the painting paper. It was not that easy to finish it. But he could not stop now. Once he forcibly stopped, the backfire would not just be the spiritual power of a painting, but the spiritual power of hundreds of thousands of people's yang qi and faith. But he could be distracted. He slowly and painstakingly wrote the last stroke and said, "You actually know." He turned his back to Yunzi and his voice did not have any other meaning. But because he used all his strength to guide the big array he was a little breathless. "I know. So you can't pray for the rain today." Yunzi took a step back and walked to the side of Li Yunxin so that he could also see the actions of the three flowers. "You used the painting array to pray for rain and then the power of wish skyrocketed. As for who the power of wish was given to, maybe it was not the demon I thought. But it doesn't matter. Your plan is a series of plans and so is mine. Enough of the drama. It's time to get down to business." Yunzi said this and took 2 steps back. But he did not make a move and only quietly looked to the northwest. Suddenly, a stumbling figure appeared in the crowd. She turned out from an alley wearing a ragged Daoist robe and rushed around. She was a little far from the high platform so it was not clear what she was shouting. But everywhere she passed, people showed panic and hesitation on their faces, and looked directly at Li Yunxin on the platform. It seemed that it was a female Daoist. She attracted the attention of many people nearby, and they all made way for her. Because she was covered in blood and her clothes were torn, revealing the wounds underneath. It wasn't a sword wound but rather a bite from a ferocious beast. Ordinary people could not tell the difference between the two kinds of wounds, but they were all stunned by the blood on her body. It was not every day that they could see such a seriously injured person running in public, and the content of her shout was even more appalling. The one on the stage isn't the Dragon King but a demon. It wants to kill all of you and refine you into Yin spirits. The crowd didn't really understand what to refine into a ghost meant, but they heard the first 3 sentences clearly. However, even though the wounds on this woman's body were frightening, her words were too shocking. For a moment, people only regarded her as a lunatic and no one was willing to touch her. In this way there was no one to stop her and the woman actually rushed all the way down the stage. After that he leaped up more than a dozen steps, pulled out a thin sword that was still stained with blood from his sleeve, and pounced straight at Li Yunxin who was still casting his spell. The crowd below the stage immediately let out a burst of exclamations, as if there was a sudden storm. At first they thought that she was a madwoman but now that they saw her skills she was clearly a kung fu master. The light of the sword went straight for her face. Li Yunxin didn't move and only shouted, "Stop her." As soon as he finished speaking, Sanhua, who was behind him, rushed forward, just like how he killed the 2 cultivators that night. With just one palm he shattered the thin sword in the female Taoist's hand. Another palm went straight for the female Taoist's face. The raging flames in the air whistled, and it seemed that the female Taoist's head was about to be smashed into pieces. At this moment Yunzi, who was standing on the side and watching coldly, shouted, "Stop." Then with a flash of golden light, he waved his sleeve and forcibly pulled the female Taoist who was covered in blood from the raging flames of Sanhua's palm to him. Sanhua made a sound of annoyance, but then she heard Li Yunxin shout in a low voice, "Enough. Step back." Dragon Lady stared at the female Taoist for a while with dissatisfaction, and then looked down the stage. The act of breaking the thin sword with one's bare hands was simply too exciting, and the crowd below the stage was watching with great interest. Seeing that the female Taoist was saved, there were still a few people who sighed, unsatisfied. Why didn't they continue fighting? But then they saw Yunzi help the female Taoist to stand steadily, and after looking up and down he exclaimed, "Taoist friend Qing Fuzi? How come it's you?" "There's a change in the city." Qing Fuzi held his arm, looked at Li Yunxin and gnashed his teeth. "This person is not the Dragon King but a demon. They have refined a group of ghosts inside and outside the city of Wei, intending to turn the city of Wei into a land of death." Hearing this, Yunzi suddenly raised his head and looked at Li Yunxin. "Is this true?" Li Yunxin squinted at the 2 of them and finally finished the finishing stroke. As soon as the stroke was finished, a cold wind suddenly blew between heaven and earth. The wind did not blow from east to west, nor from west to east. Instead it was like a whirlwind that rose from the ground and no one could tell where it came from. Just like that it flowed through the crowd in the city. And because of this wind, the originally gloomy rain clouds were pressed down even lower. It was as if one stood a little higher, they could touch the moisture in the sky with a stretch of their hands. The spiritual qi and the power of vow within the radius of 100 miles were finally affected by the finishing stroke, and began to circulate in accordance with the weather. Li Yunxin finally let out a sigh of relief after this was done. He didn't care about the eyes of those people and only stared at Qing Fuzi, who was beside Yunzi, for a while and pointed at her. "I didn't find you previously and I thought you were killed by him. Now it seems that you have been put in an important position and your acting is passable. Do you know what I'm waiting for? I'm waiting for you." He no longer used supernatural power to speak, and the people below the stage couldn't hear him. Instead, Yunzi frowned and shouted again with supernatural power, "So you're really a demon?" Li Yunxin suddenly laughed. "Save it. You want to act with me? I know what you're planning. You asked this woman to kidnap Shirquizi and then torture her to death. Today you asked her to appear in front of me like this. Previously, when you said that you were a Daotong sublime being, I didn't deny it in public and everyone knew your identity. Since you're an immortal, then it's easy to suspect whether I'm the demon that this woman identified. Then as you said, my spell can't ask for rain. If I can't ask for rain, then you'll say that I'm really a demon. If I can't control myself and kill this woman on the spot, then I'll have confirmed my reputation as a demon in public. The Daoist who killed Sendoist Daoist must not be a good person. But look, my spell has been completed. The spiritual qi and the power of vow inside and outside the city of Wei circulate endlessly. I'd like to know, what method do you have to make my spell lose its effectiveness? You could have just killed me. But if you do that, it'll be too boring for you. I guess from the first day I told you how I killed Qing Liangzi, you've been planning to use the same method on me. Yunzi looked at Li Yunxin and suddenly a joyful smile appeared on his face. The happiest thing is to make a person's wish come to nothing when he's full of himself. Now, I actually experienced the feeling of joy that you mentioned. How do I make your spell lose its effectiveness? Kid, my Daotong has been passed down for thousands of years, and your school of painting has only been around for 2,000 years. Do you really think that there's no way to restrain your obscene painting techniques? Some people think that the art saint who was possessed by the devil has been killed, and the school of painting has been destroyed, and that there's no profound painting techniques in the world. Thus, no one is willing to study methods to restrain painting techniques. But I happen to dabble in this. As for this method, hee. Yunzi took a step forward and looked at Li Yunxin. Your spell is the finishing touch and I have the same method. But, he turned to look at Qing Fuzi, the eye of my spell is a human. It's said that when the art saint was destroyed 1,000 years ago, the high-level cultivators suffered heavy casualties. That devil was extremely cunning and it was very difficult to kill him with ordinary methods. Thus, an extremely talented cultivator thought of a method, and with this method as well as the sacrifice of dozens of high-level cultivators, they finally defeated that devil. After that, because this method was too cruel, it was sealed away. If you want to know, it's a human sacrifice. Yunzi reached out and patted Qing Fuzi's shoulder. The female Daoist, who was covered in wounds, was immediately nailed to the ground by a powerful spiritual force, unable to move. She could only stare at the true state Daoist beside her, as if she understood something. You killed more than 20 people and I killed more than 10. Yunzi looked at Qing Fuzi without a care and said to himself, she said that there's someone in the city who refines ghosts and it's true. Unfortunately, her knowledge is too limited, and it's not comparable to any ghosts. I want you to kill them and I want their Reiki. I've already left talisman marks on their bodies. Once they die, their bodies are destroyed and their ghosts are taken away, but their Reiki is left in place by me with a secret method. You killed more than 20 people in the city, it doesn't matter where they died or where their Reiki is left. The important thing is the more than 20 people outside the city. Yunzi reached out and pointed at Li Yunxin, drew a person on the land outside the city. Li Yunxin exclaimed in a low voice and knocked the folding fan in his hand. I thought that although you knew that I made a painting array, you couldn't see through it. Now you actually know that I drew a person. Then you really understand. That's right. Using the city of Wei and the land around it and the original direction of the roads, rivers, forests and fields, plus I added dozens of strokes in the name of building bridges and roads. I drew a person. Yunzi smiled. Now that your array is done, I can also feel the direction of the Reiki. It's leading the Reiki to the sky and it's leading the turbid air to the sky. Yin and Yang collide and it's going to turn into rain. Such a big array can bring rain, and those people's power of vow will increase greatly. But who are you going to give this power of vow to? Of course it's for myself. Such a good thing, why should I give it to others? Li Yunxin said with a smile. Yunzi only thought that he said it in the spur of the moment and didn't care about it and didn't ask further. He patted Qing Fuzi's shoulder again. It's fine if you don't say. Then I'll tell you the finishing touch of my array. It's this person. In a while, I'll let you kill her in front of everyone right here. Once she's dead, the eye of the array will be formed. The dozens of spiritual eyes formed by Reiki outside the city will draw the Reiki left behind by the 20 people you killed in the city. Then with the help of the endless Reiki in your array, you'll refine them into Yin spirits. Yin spirits, not Yin spirits. Without any consciousness, they can't be hurt by ordinary methods. In other words, they can hurt you but you can't touch them. The shape of the Qingfuzi was borrowed from this method of refining Yin spirits, but it's slightly improved. As for you, once my array is completed, I'll force out the real body of the demon beside you in front of everyone. This thing, the power of vow, whether it's good or bad wishes, is like water being filled into a skin bag. Right now, tens of thousands of people in the city of Wei believe in you, whether it's the demon beside you or the demon that I don't know yet. Once those people see that you can't get rain and you're not Dragon Son or Dragon King, their faith will collapse. The water in the skin bag will be sucked out in an instant and then you'll suffer. Now, I'll become my array and use the Reiki that you used to pray for rain to sacrifice my Yin spirits. When those ignorant people think you're liars, demons, Li Yunxin suddenly raised his hand, took a step forward and smashed Qingfuzi's head with his palm. Then he wiped his eyes, waved his sleeves and dispersed her ghost. When he did this, Yunzi was still talking but his words were stuck in his throat because of his action. After a while he frowned. Thank you for your patience and persuasion, but you may not know that villains die because they talk too much. You don't have the protagonist's halo. Li Yunxin put his folding fan back into his sleeves, amidst the panicked exclamations of the people below the stage. Then he took 2 steps back, wiped away the mischievous expression on his face and said seriously, "You said so much just to tell me that you watched me complete this array but didn't say anything. Just to use the spiritual power of my array today to complete your array to refine the Yin spirits, and at the same time, make me unable to manifest my divinity and reign. Then force me and the silly lady behind me to show their original forms, so that their power of faith will collapse. In this way you first remove our foundation, then cut off our source of faith and refine your Yin spirits. It's really killing 3 birds with 1 stone. If you want me to kill her, just say it. Why do you have to be so long-winded? Now that I understand your plan, my heart finally calms down." Then Taoist Yunzi. Li Yunxin sighed. "Do you realize that you're not right now? For example, why don't you try to activate your array and see what kind of magical effect it will have?" Chapter 187. You're bluffing. After hearing his words, Yunzi did not hesitate at all. He immediately pressed his hand down. A cloud of green gas appeared where Qingfuzi died, and at the same time he let out a sigh of relief. Then the green gas shook slightly and turned into a slender human figure without facial features, with slender limbs and a short torso. Its head was like a green candle flame that was about to be extinguished in the wind. In just a breath's time, the human figure had grown to the height of 3 Li Yunxins. It stood shakily and looked down at the 2 of them. Yunzi took another step forward and growled, "You think I don't know you have other tricks up your sleeves? But it's too late." He suddenly raised his hand high, his sleeves fluttering in the wind caused by the formation. "Where is the gang god?" As soon as he finished speaking, 36 green lights with black gas shot up from inside and outside the city of Wei, piercing the firmament. The people below the stage couldn't see this scene, but in the eyes of Li Yunxin he was horrified. Originally the sky was covered with heavy rain clouds. But now the 36 Yin spirit gang god formed by the spiritual qi of the dead Taoists pierced into the clouds, and the rain clouds underwent a terrible change. In the eyes of cultivators the clouds were no longer gray but dark green. The wind between the heavens and the earth was no longer whistling. Instead it was countless tiny shrill cries. "Why did you kill me? You must take revenge. You died an unjust death." These were the words left behind by the cultivators before they were killed. The resentment of the nether spirits quickly seeped into the spiritual qi circulation in the formation drawn by Li Yunxin, like poisonous vines reaching into the human body along the blood vessels and meridians. And in a sense what Li Yunxin drew was a person. The resentment of the nether spirits did enter the body of the person. But it was far from being able to completely occupy and erode the spiritual qi in the formation. After all, the spirit qi was based on the faith of tens of thousands of people. The faith of these people below the stage was the source of the spirit qi of the formation. Of course Yunzi understood this. He used 2 breaths of time to say 2 sentences and do 2 things. Li Yunxin, on the other hand, seemed to have been frightened by this situation, and he also took 2 steps back. He stared at Yunzi, then looked at the confused people below the stage who had no idea what was happening. He pointed at the Taoist priest and shouted, "Impossible! The spiritual energy of this formation comes from the faith of the tens of thousands of people in the audience. As long as their faith is not extinguished, you can't do anything to my formation. You can't do anything to my array, but I can ask for rain. I've begged for rain and there's nothing you can do unless you can. At this point, Li Yunxin suddenly stopped as if he had thought of something terrifying and unbelievable. His gaze quickly shifted between Yunzi and the crowd below the stage and he took another step back. You really want to kill them? Yunzi laughed wildly in the wind that was getting stronger and stronger. Ha! It's not me who will kill them, it's you and this demon who will kill them. When I slaughter all of you and the people from Daotong come, besides me, who else can you trust? He didn't use any magical power when he said this. But as soon as he finished, he immediately shouted in a serious and honest voice that could be heard by the tens of thousands of people. What a bold demon! You dare to commit murder in front of I, and now you want to use the lives of the people in this city to practice your evil magic? How can I allow you to be so arrogant? After saying this, Yunzi waved his sleeve again and the sky suddenly darkened. This time, the tens of thousands of people near the Dragon God Temple could see what Li Yunxin saw. Tens of thousands of people spread out on the ground, squeezing from Taoshi Road to Willow Street. Even such a large area was shrouded by the spiritual aura of a Daoist in the true realm. With his amazing magical power, Yunzi cut off half of the connection between Willow River Prefecture and this world. When passers-by outside this area looked in, they still saw the gloomy sky, the rain clouds that seemed to be within reach, and the people who were watching the Dragon God Temple from afar. However, once he stepped over the dividing line, he would never be able to get out again. What he would see would be dark clouds covering the sky, 36 towering pillars of greenish-black light between heaven and earth, and terrifying clouds that looked like poisonous clouds in the sky. His ears would be filled with resentful roars, the mournful wails in the wind, and the stuffy air that would pour into his body, making it difficult for him to breathe. Once he was frightened and wanted to escape, he would find that no matter how fast or how hard he ran, he would always be at the same place where he came in. The ordinary, stuffy and mundane world outside was just within reach. But he couldn't escape. This kind of despair was even greater than the previous fear. Everyone's first reaction when they saw this scene was to escape. This scene, the words of the Daoist, and the intense fear that was derived from the Daoist's human aura urged them to escape. Escape with all their might. Thus, without any magical power or method, a terrifying death began to spread among the tens of thousands of people. Squeezing, trampling, fighting, and finally people gathered at the boundary of this area. Wave after wave of people hoped to rush out, but their lives ended here. If one looked down from the sky, they would find that after a quarter of an hour, this area had almost turned black and red. And a circle of even more distinct bloodlines surrounded the Sajura field. Almost no one within the circle survived. Li Yunxin looked at all of this, dumbfounded. After a long while, he turned to look at Yunzi. This way, the chi of resentful spirits is enough. Yunzi raised his head slightly and let out a long breath. 8,000 years ago, this formation killed the art saint who was possessed by the devil. Now I have recreated this formation. At that time, it was 108 profound realm cultivators that were refined into Yin spirits. Now I only use the 36 celestial stars to refine divine Yin spirits. At this time you should really understand what I mean. Do you really think that I came here for that Ling Kongzi, for that jade scroll of enlightenment? Yunzi turned and walked slowly to the edge of the platform, looking down at the blood and flesh on the ground. Some people did not die but only suffered serious injuries. Some people saw that the situation was not good and hid in the houses, escaping the disaster. But such people were only 1 or 2 in 1,000 out of the tens of thousands, only a few hundred people. There was a dying person below the platform who saw Yunzi's figure and stretched out his hand with difficulty from the pool of blood, shouting for Sendo to save him. Yunzi looked at those people and sighed with a compassionate expression. He stretched out a finger and killed them one by one as if he was crushing ants. While nodding, he said, I want to stay in Wei City and hold power. Not only you, but that Long Erzi's hatred is also not enough. Even if he's not injured, a profound realm demon is already a threat. Why should I stay here instead of getting rid of him? So he can't. The real opponent is that old thing Lord Dongting. After Yu Yunzi killed all the people below the stage, she didn't bother about the people hiding in the houses. He just put his hands behind his back and looked up at the green clouds in the sky, sighing in the strong wind. That old thing turned into a human 3,000 years ago, and was imprisoned in Dongting 2,000 years ago. After Long Sun came out, people's eyes were fixed on Long Sun and those restless big demons. How could they know that Lord Dongting is the terrifying opponent who holds the greatest secret in this world? And because of that secret he watched Chiwen die. Heh. My array is done, so I will use it to fight against that old thing. See what he is guarding. Yunzi turned his back to Li Yunxin. He didn't care about him and that dragon lady at all. He had seen through all the opponent's plans. He also knew that there were 4 demons with him. Those 4 demons were outside the city. However, no matter what they were planning outside the city, it was nothing to worry about. Kun Wuzi, the head of the Dongting Heaven, said that there were only 2 high-level cultivators in the kingdom of Qing. But in fact there was a third one. Not counting Lin Liangzi of the Freemasonry, he had already invited a fellow cultivator a month ago. That was a Taoist master of the Kenzo named Tong Fengzi. His cultivation was unparalleled, and his sword qi could come and go freely from 100 miles away. Later that Kenzo cultivator would go outside the city of Wei to clean up the 4 demons. It was really a waste of his talents, and then he would come and meet him in the city to plot against Lord Dongting. Moreover, his great array was done now. As he turned his back to Li Yunxin, he said these words unhurriedly. At the same time, he used his spiritual power to guide the soaring resentment of tens of thousands of dead people into the array that Li Yunxin had set up. He let his spiritual power run along the meridians of the array's spiritual qi flow, and let the resentment he guided slowly erode the spiritual qi in the array until it was completely replaced. Slowly, he realized that this array was really exquisite. The points and knots he set up were all decent and had the demeanor of a master. That Li Yunxin used the canals, roads and various points to draw a person on the vast land of the city of Wei. Not only was it a human shape, but he also arranged the meridians within. This kind of technique and vision could be considered a genius of the present age. His array was getting stronger and stronger. Finally, in 6 breaths' time, it completely expelled the spiritual qi in the array that Li Yunxin had set up and used it for his own use. Now, the city of Wei and the land within 100 miles around it are all under the control of my array. Yunzi looked up to the sky and let out a long sigh. It is said that the art saint who was possessed by the devil was good at using arrays. Therefore, this nether spirit array is the array of Li and Taojiang, using resentment to replace spiritual qi. No matter how exquisite your array is, it will eventually become mine. I can command it like my own arm, and it will be easier than you to control it. This is the combination of the person and the array, and it will form its own territory. So now Yunzi said as he slowly turned around. Turning was an effortless movement, but he stopped in the middle of it. After a moment of hesitation, he reached out his hand. A drop of rain fell on his palm. Then he felt a slight chill on his forehead. Then he saw thousands of raindrops the size of beans falling from the sky in a white line. It was raining. This is the right time. You're a lucky kid. Yunzi snorted coldly and pointed to the sky. He shouted in a low voice, "Disperse." After this sound, the originally dark green clouds in the sky immediately rolled and dissipated. But what was revealed was not the sun and the azure sky, but the clouds were rolling like snakes of lightning, and the gloomier and heavier clouds. Yunzi was stunned and his eyes widened. A thick bolt of lightning flashed through the clouds and instantly illuminated his face. The true state cultivator finally sensed something unusual. He turned around abruptly and was stunned again. The person standing behind him was no longer the white-robed Li Yunxin. Instead, it was a tall demon god. His body was covered with pale green scales, and his neck was covered with a thick snow-like mane. A pair of ferocious red horns stood upright, and his head was slightly lowered. With a cruel and mocking expression, he stared at him with a pair of golden eyes. And the dragon lady behind him was nowhere to be seen. "It's not the right time, idiot." The demon god stretched his back and the scales on his body clanked, as if countless sharp blades were rubbing against each other. He seemed to have been restrained for a very long time and endured for a very long time. Now he could finally do something freely, so even his tone, smile and action seemed wild and arrogant. That's me summoning the rain. As he spoke, he raised his left hand. In the center of his palm, a cloud and mist curled up, and in the cloud and mist, there were hair-like tiny lightning bolts rolling. It was as if the lightning and clouds in the sky had all shrunk into his palm. The heavy rain had formed and Yunzi's hair was drenched. But his wrinkle-free Daoist robe was not wet at all, which made him look very strange. He took 2 steps back, looked up at Li Yunxin and said in disbelief, "You are really hatred? How is this possible?" No, you are not hatred. Listen carefully. This is something that will soon be known by the world, but you may not be able to wait until then. But since you have been playing with me these days, I will tell you in advance so you won't be a muddled ghost. The demon god bent down slightly so that he could stare into the eyes of the Daoist in the truth state. Hot white mist rose from his mouth and nose and he said to Yunzi, "I am not hatred. I am the Wei River Dragon King Li Yunxin. Today after I kill you, a Daotong truth state cultivator who has entered the evil path and saved the people of Wei River, the world will know my name." Yunzi stared at him for a while and suddenly became furious. A sense of humiliation and disappointment after his plan failed rushed into his head. Even with the cultivation of a Daoist enlightened master, he couldn't get rid of it completely. Because his hard work for more than a month was dissolved just like that. By a demon. It's too early for you to be happy. His Daoist robe suddenly swelled up, and a shocking amount of spiritual qi filled his body. There were even bits of golden light dancing around his body. You are the Qi One of the transcendent state. I can kill you like killing an ant. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.